What's up, everybody? Welcome, welcome. It is very early. Hopefully everyone is doing well. RPG. Oh, I forgot to do it here.
RPG!
What is up, everybody? Jackal's Hormoons. Love me, Jackal. Jackal's great. Jackal says hype. Zen was about to go to bed. Please, by all means, Zen. You're on the West Coast, right, Zen? It's not too late there. What's up, Scott? What are you doing up? I guess it is Saturday night, Sunday morning. What ungodly time is it for Derek? It is almost 3 a.m., as GM Scott said. Let's just go up. Where's Tin just woke? There you go. And then, of course, it's Sunday night over there in Australia. Pumpkin is correct. Well, actually, so today was a completely relaxing day. I got a really great sleep last night. In fact, my little watch has this stupid body battery factor, and it takes into account things like your heart rate, how much you're moving, and your stress rating, and your heart rate variability. And it basically just gives you some random bullshit number about how energized you are. And then I woke up this morning. I had a great night's sleep. Friday night, we I forgot about Twitch. I'll say. Yeah, I could throw up Twitch real quick. Multiple output. There we go. Twitch should be live. And we had a great game of Fabula Ultima last night. Of course, we've been playing remotely, so we're playing online, which worked out really well because honestly, okay, I say that with a caveat, which is that my group of players, most of whom have worked in IT for 20 or more years, are terrible with using VTTs. So I realized that one of the reasons I don't like VTTs is because me and my players are just terrible at using them. Anyways, we don't know where anything is, and no one ever clicks the right button, and no one remembers to target anything, and nothing ever works. And and the longer you've worked in IT, the more likely you are to not know what you're doing. It's really great. Anyways, but we had a great session, and the reason I say it's great is because playing online is because so many of my players are dads, and it's just so easy for them to just be able to get on, and people are always sick and everything like that. So anyways, it worked out really well. And I should note that this was our fourth Fabula Ultima session, I think, in 5 weeks. So in 5 weeks or 6 weeks, we've done 4 sessions. That's like as much gaming as we did like in 2025. So it's been pretty sweet. Anyways, so we had a great session, and sometimes on Friday nights, after a game session, I will still go up to the game shop because those guys will still be, because we used to game till midnight or whatever. Nowadays, around 10 o'clock, or whatever, people start, being like, okay, we've been here from 7 to 10. We're pretty good. I'm going to get home or whatever to the kids and get, I have an early day tomorrow. We're going to so-and-so's birthday party, or we have, something with the kids, It's always something with the kids. But everyone's playing from home now. So, we play a little later. Anyways, I was going to go up to the shop, but they finished early. This is where they play Magic, Friday Night Magic. They don't play Friday Night Magic. They just do a team draft that sometimes I play in. Anyways, but they were done early, and they had already eaten food and stuff like that. And I said, okay. So I got something to eat here at home after my session wrapped up, and I was kind of feeling tired. So I went to bed early. Anyways, early for me, like midnight. And I got an incredible, 10 hours of sleep. I woke up, my watch said I was at 100% battery, and I woke up, I was feeling great. I went out, I got some coffee. I had nothing on my schedule today. It was incredible. And I had so little going on today, and the snow's all melted, and it was a little cooler today, but not like freezing like it's been. So I said, I'm going to drive out to the west side of the city. I'm on the east side of the city. Drive out to the west side of the city to one of my favorite game stores in the Northeast Ohio region. It's the weirdest game store of all time. It's like 1 part museum, 1 part library, 1 part antique store, 1 part hoarder's basement. And it's absolutely incredible. GM Scott knows the place. It is indeed the Matrix. It's a crazy store. And I try to get out there at least, honestly, sweet tart or sweet threat. Yes. 1 part meth lab would not surprise me in the slightest. This guy's amazing. There's his store. There's like a store frontage, right? Where there's maybe 5 or 6 buildings, or 5 or 6 different units all in one building. Right. And over the years, I've been going out to this guy's store since the late 90s. And over the years, he just fills up his store. It is my supposition that when a new RPG product buys up, or comes out, he buys 10 to 20 copies of it, regardless of what it is. And he puts it on his shelves. And then if he doesn't sell it, which happens when you order 10 to 20 of any RPG product, he never takes it off of the shelves, ever. Instead, what he has done over the last 25 years is just progressively buy more and more of the building. Okay. So he bought the unit next to that. Then he bought the unit next to that. And he just keeps expanding it. And now he basically owns the entire strip mall, if you will. And it's like going through a time machine. If you go far enough back into the store, there's AD&D second edition books on the shelf, and not in a half price bookstore used way. No, that's where they were put when they came out in 1998, and they are still on the shelf because turns out not everyone bought all the copies of Skills and Powers or Combat and Tactics when it came out in 97 or whatever. It's a crazy place. Anyways, I haven't been out there for a while, so I decided to drive out there. Anyway, so I drove out there. I had a great day. I got back, and I was feeling good. I still had a lot of energy. So I went to the gym, and I walked on the treadmill, and I did some lifting, just a little bit, just to move a little bit, because I've been in kind of a mass gaining phase, but not of the muscle variety, of the fat variety. And just because it's the wintertime, and I walk the dogs less, and I indulge with sweets and treats. So I've been trying to slowly get back into the groove. And anyways, so I worked out. I felt great. Came home. It was like 6:00, maybe. I took I got something to eat. I took a hot shower. Shaved and cleaned up. Took a hot shower. And then I was feeling so good, I fell asleep. I fell asleep on the couch. I don't even know for how long. 5, 6 hours. By the way, like I at this point, I'd only been up for like 8 hours. I fell asleep on the couch. And I woke up, like an hour or so ago. And I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I was hanging out. I was doing nothing, and then I said, "Okay, I'm gonna go. I'll get a hop." Anyway, oh, you know what it was? I was messing around with controlling my lights via my Stream Deck, and I had everything on, including this OBS, right, so that I could, mess around with the lights and see what's happening with that, and and so I was like, okay, what should I do? Where should I go with this? And I was like, okay, well, I'm not here anyways. I'll see what's online. Who's online? Anyways, what's up, everybody? Pumpkin says I should just tell people I'm cultivating mass. Yes. Unlike Rob McElhaney, though, I don't know if I'm ever going to get completely and totally jacked. But I do, I do love Rob McElhaney. No, it is not a light stream. It is not. I'm just been, these are new lights. I'm still trying to work them into my integration. Hey, what's up, Vin? What have been the reactions to the Golden Knights, if any, from the industry peeps you know? Nothing. No one knows anything about them, except for we had a handful of people who honestly were on the stream. I think Evan from Nimble was in the stream. So there's that. I'm checking my email, my Knights of Last Call email just now, actually. No, nothing. So absolutely nothing. Which is fine. Whatever. I didn't do it for that. I did it for our own purposes. I will say the reaction has been that I think I saw Mishi Knight. I saw Mishi Knight did their own review on Reddit. So I saw that, Mishi. Obviously, Tundless. Well, Tundless was there, but also Tundless. I mean, Tundless is a patron, so I mean, I see Tundless all the time. Yes, Roll for Combat did get an award. Actually, there was a brief conversation in a group chat that me, Steven, and Mark are in, and Steven said, "Thanks to Derek, Eldamon now officially award winning," and Mark said, "I mean, all awards are either someone/some group of informed people liked it, or it's a popularity contest. So by that metric, why not a Golden Knight?" And yes. And Steven said, "Hey man, I was watching and these awards are nothing, but what Derek liked and I was excited listening to it." So that's pretty cool. I mean, they appreciated it and I meant it. We need a 3D. I do have a 3D printer. I don't know what we're going to do. Send it out to people. No, it was you had a good list, Mishi. I saw it. It was really good. And actually that post seemed to be pretty well received on Reddit. So that was pretty cool. GM Scott. Yes. If you're ever in Cleveland and you're ever over by the Cleveland Hopkins International Airport, it is a worthwhile place to visit. Let's see if there's any. I like how if you type this in Google, the first thing is, if you're into wargaming, do not go to Warzone Matrix. And to a certain extent, they are right. No one should actually go there. But it is quite the spot. Here we go. These photos might be too. How does Google work? Okay. So let me see if I can bring this up here. Okay. This is from 4 years ago. So this isn't even like, this is not even really respective of how crazy it is. But like you can see, this is just a shelf. And this isn't like collector's editions or stuff. These are just books that like who has this many? This is the AD&D second edition Dungeon Master's Guide, by the way. Who has this many copies of the Dungeon Master's Guide? Nobody. Let alone any of this. You can see some Dark Sun stuff on the shelf there. Speaking of, by the way, I was talking about having a bunch of players' options. Look at that. Look at all the player options, combat and tactics and skills and powers right there. I was even kidding about that. And there it is. Look at that. It is just like the board games are packed in like Lego blocks or like Tetris pieces. It is truly it is a completely crazy store. It's just like packed to the rafters. just full of bric-a-brac and lots of wargaming and old Warhammer sprues and just like some of the most just random things that you'll ever see in your entire life. And and this is, by the way, exceptionally clean. It's every year it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and more packed and more packed and more packed and more packed. I'm telling you, it just gets higher and higher and higher. And you can just see this is 8 years ago. So let me tell you, this is relatively, it gets better and better and better. But then look at all these books. They're all just like there's like 7 copies of every 4th edition book on the shelves here. It's absolutely insanity. It's completely crazy. Anyways, it's an amazing experience for sure. It is really cool. Chris actually doesn't have a beard. I do. So Chris was a vet. I don't know when he. I don't know exactly when he served, but he was a veteran, and I think between his I think he might have some sort of disability payment or whatever. Regardless, I don't really think he runs. I mean, he obviously makes some money, but I don't think I think he has other sources of income. Yeah, he's got a great dog, service dog. It's just he's just a great person. He's really fun stuff. Yeah, Dr. Dehart, it's a tight fit. It sometimes some of the aisles, I recommend you bring a flashlight. I'm not kidding. Some of the corners are pretty dark. It can be kind of a tight fit, tight squeeze for those of us of a larger persuasion, for sure. And it's truly unique. I mean, I think GM Scott was talking about, yeah. In order to stack things higher, he removed some of the drop ceiling tiles so that he could basically store books up into the literally to the rafters. He like refuses. Again, he's like a hoarder, but it's a store, so it's kind of sweet. It's almost to the point where it's not really shopping. It really does feel like people who go antiquing. They're not going there to buy something specifically because it kind of defeats the point. Like you go there to discover something. And sometimes you come out of there with just the craziest things. It's amazing. I'm sorry you didn't get to go. It really is an amazing experience. And what the guy was talking about, why not to go there, is because once upon a time, there was a big back room that had like 6 full-sized Warhammer tables. That's usually 4 foot by 10 foot or 4 foot by 8 foot. He had like 6 of them, tons of terrain that you could use on the shelves and stored underneath the tables. And a lot of people used to go up there to play Warhammer, war games. Smith and I used to go up there and play war games back in the early 2000s, 90s. But as the great expansion, as like a cancerous cell spread out, that room is no longer. You cannot play. You cannot play any sort of game in that area. And then he took over the building next door, and then they used to play Magic over there. And then that became filled with games as well. So, and there's nooks and crannies, and again, it's like an onion. It's like you can move through it. Well, that's my point, GM Scott. Each year, it has gotten more and more unusable as a space, and I would argue it's become more and more unusable as a store. You can't really go there to buy something because you're never going to be able to find it. Yeah, Garblag, exactly. It's like sedimentary layers. You can carbon date what version of D&D was in. Like, oh, we've broken through into the early 90s, or the late 90s. Oh, I can see. Look at the products. Oh, TSR was going bankrupt. I discovered a room that had no lights at all. I had to bring out my phone just to see where I was walking. I said, bring a flashlight. I wasn't kidding. It's great, but it's also like a crazy experience. Yeah, I said it's like part museum, part store, part hoarders. It is truly an incredible experience. But it's a museum where you can buy everything, anything. It's a really interesting space. And he has stuff that just you wouldn't think, you wouldn't even believe. So, anyways, I'd spend too much money at this place. This sounds awesome. It is awesome. It is awesome. When I was there in 2023 or something, 2024 maybe, I don't know. I went there and I was like, I wanted to fill out the last of my 4th edition collection. There was about 8 or 9 hardcovers that I never bought, never picked up, and he had them all, so I bought them all. So that was a good time. Anyways, long story short, that was what I did today, and then I took another nap, even out though I got like 10 hours of sleep, and I woke up at like 10 a.m. So I was only up for like 9 to 10 hours. I got out, I got a coffee, I got some food. I went over, I explored this cool gaming store. I got a workout in, I took a nice shower, and then I fell asleep. So then I slept for like another 4 or 5 hours, and I woke up, and now we're here. So I hesitate to call it insomnia. It's just like I just slept a lot, so I'm up, and here we are. And then I got really confused, and I thought today was Tuesday. Sometimes not. I will say the whole not being employed thing does suck because you do lose track of time. And it's not like my streaming schedule is 100%. I stream Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I also stream Sundays and Fridays and all this other stuff. And it's been wild. It's been crazy. I am definitely stuck in a time loop for sure. Anyways, long story short, I had a great time on Thursday doing our Golden Nights. That was a lot of fun. We had a huge turnout for that stream, by the way, people. I mean, yes, we had a lot of people in the chat tipping and supporting, which was completely unexpected. I didn't expect any of that. But we had. I'm looking up the data here. Let's see. Going to the analytics. Hold on a sec here. Let me bring up the analytics. Okay. Whoop. All right. So we got. Here we go. We reached a peak viewers of 193. That's crazy. So that was pretty dang good for us. I mean, that's like double our normal viewers. So the people were pretty happy about that. And yeah, almost 2,000 chat messages. Pretty good stuff. Let's see here. Who's watching this thing? Ooh, look at that. Computer outdid mobile phone for this one. Are you in my demographic? 100% male. 28% age 25 to 34. 38%, 35 to 44, 28%, 45 to 54, and 6%, 55 to 64. Most of you are from the United States, Canada, United Kingdom. And 80% of you are subscribed. So this is the number that like most YouTubers would just be like blown away by. like almost all of my watch time comes from people being subscribed, which is crazy. But anyways, yeah, that was pretty cool. There we go. UK male 46. I think I need to get my passport renewed, and I need to get over to the UK. I've never been. I really want to go. I'm right between you guys. I'm not UK, but I'm male 43. GM Scott, old man GM Scott. We're getting there, buddy. Well, look at that. It's a wild dirt in the horizon, in the wild. What's up, dirt? Spoken like a true old man, Pumpkin. Oh, let's see here. Caught the VOD for the 90s. It was an awesome stream. I wish I could have been there. I can't believe Fabula Ultima didn't win anything. Well, a couple of number one, Fabula Ultima, it is an older game at this point. It's been around. It's done what it's come here to do. And obviously I think the game is great. I'm running it. It's my current Friday night campaign. I'm excited. I backed the hell out of the bestiary. Really excited for that. In fact, I backed it, maximum version, and then backed it more.
Lionhead Gaming tipped $14. Stuff this in the trespass of third look.
Thank you, Lionhead.
Also, it bothered me. It was 411.
And look at that G&A.
Goblins and Androids tipped $15.
Nice.
Good morning from EU. Any plans to run some games?
So I'm going to answer.
Let
me answer Goblins. I'll get to answer your question in a second. But thank you, Lionhead, for your OCD and your need to tip $14. I appreciate that, and thank you, G&A, as well. Appreciate you for that. But I'm glad you were able to catch it. Even if on the VOD, VOD's fine. Again, like I said, the advantage of watching on the VOD is you can watch it times 2 speed. It's really nice. So I really appreciate you. But I just wanted to quickly finish up and say that Fabula Ultima, really, really cool game. However, I think that Fabula Ultima, a lot of people were surprised that Daggerheart didn't win as many awards. Now, it did win for Best New Game for 2025. And I think that it deserves that because I think it's got a big presence and it's got a lot of people excited and it's still carrying some momentum. And I think it deserved that. But when I look at Daggerheart and I look at Fabula Ultima, I do see some of the same underlying problems, which is the tension and the I don't know how to describe it. The tension and the misunderstanding that can occur when you have a game that has strong gamist mechanics and overtones, and then deliberately over the top or powerful narrative mechanics. And I'm not just talking about like narrative, like, oh, this game's about storytelling. I mean, like legitimately narrative mechanics. You're just so much better than me, Jackal. You should be doing my stream. Design dissonance is a great way to describe it. And I can see, I've always felt that. I always knew that was going to be a thing, but I do see it at times, not so much from the way I play my game, because I can run my game however I want, but it's hard to know how to play the game right. And that is something that bothers me because I like to play games correctly, if that makes any sense. So while Fabula Ultima, I really love it. And I think it did win silver for a number of things. I think it won silver for like layout and design. So, I mean, it definitely won silver. And I think it would have also, might have won my like second place and something else as well. But it's a great game, and there's a reason I'm playing it. It does a lot of things well, but I don't know that it does any one thing the best. Does that make sense? So that's why it was hard for it to win an award. So we can go back to that, but I do want to answer Goblins because he was nice enough to tip. G&A, I am going to be running games for the patrons in 2026. last year we ran Torchbearer. It was really fun. It was really successful. I have a couple of ideas, G&A. If I'm being completely honest, if you want, I can talk about them. It's the middle of the night, but before I do that, I'm going to crack a window just because it's a little warm in here with all the stuff going. All righty. Chair stream, indeed. Yeah, about what I'm going to run. I will say before we get into that is that it is a great for talking about the dissonance. A great example of this is when people talk about Fabula Ultima, and especially even my patrons when they talk about Fabula Ultima, they're all talking about their party builds and the cool mechanical combos they do and the broken OP combinations that they're making and and all this other stuff. And when my group plays Fabula Ultima, you get a fair amount of Fabula points when you play Fabula Ultima. My group spends Fabula points to alter the story, to create, situational, fictional advantages for them to take advantage of and exploit. Which isn't to say they don't enjoy pushing the buttons. They don't hate going into combat. But in a game where if they were to all be TPK'd, they could all just choose surrender. They find it very hard to care, and they like this, by the way. They find it very difficult to care about how efficient or car opt or powerful or meaningful their characters are in combat, because the price for dying is they surrender, and they know Derek isn't gonna, Derek's gonna make the story cool and awesome and feral. And we were giving this example last night. It was completely zero prep session. In fact, my power was out for a good number of hours before the session on Friday, so I literally had no time to prep, and I didn't even know if we were gonna play. Power came on maybe 10 minutes beforehand, 15 minutes beforehand. And I said, okay, we're going to play. And the group is racing to get to Tim's people before the Empire gets there and attacks. But the group is out of IP and they're really hurt and they really need to rest and recover. And Bob's space pirate, spends a Fabula point and is like, oh, I know of a place, a safe place, where I can, we can find some refuge and I can recover. And I go, okay, cool. So we make up this new place called Driftfall, and it's basically like a Tortuga, right? It's like a scum, Mos Eisley. It's like a hive of scum and villainy. And they go there and they, reacquire some IP, and Bob's airship has a thing where it basically says I can fuck with him once per session for free. And he gets a Fabula point. And then Bob failed a check while he was trying to sweetheart talk this shop dealer into giving it, because Bob didn't want to pay full price for restoring his inventory points, of course, because it's Bob. And he failed the check, and it was, of course, Bob made a Fabula point to say, oh, I know somebody here who can give me a deal. And so, of course, in the line of Bob's character was some ex-lover, and he failed the check to negotiate. And I said she gave him the discount, but then she kind of betrayed him and turned him into this mafioso character, Don Giovannis, and who had basically impounded Bob, very Han Solo coded, impounded Bob's ship and said, you stole my money and I need my money back, or you're going to get beat up, you're going to get killed. And the group, did some other stuff, and they're basically like, oh, maybe there's a problem you have to deal with. And of course, it's Final Fantasy coded. So the boss was like, yes, there's a powerful spirit, there's a powerful creature in the depths of the Undercity that's been messing with my operations. If you take that out, we'll be square deal. So I just randomly pulled this monster out of the compendium from Foundry called Cerberus. And Tim spends a Fabula point. He's like, oh, it's like a spirit of fire. My character is like the fire avatar. And so maybe I know this spirit, and I'm like kind of concerned, and maybe I know about it. And so we built up this whole connection between Tim and the spirit, the fire spirit, and the Cerberus was like, kind of almost like a GF, a guardian force, or from Final Fantasy VIII. And I said, yes, but it's corrupted somehow. And we hinted at that there being like a demonic presence, or maybe this Magitech collar that's somehow like corrupting it. Anyways, they go down, they fight this boss. It's a boss, fight. And Tim's character goes to 0 hit points. So he gets taken out and he chooses to surrender. So he gets 2 Fabula points. And as the price for him surrendering, I gave him a new bond. And the bond is basically the demon soul. And we had kind of built up through Tim's Fabula point that he needed to like rebond with this spirit of fire. And so even though he died, he lost. I said, once its corporeal form is beaten, the primal spirit of fire, respects that you guys beat it. Classic Final Fantasy logic. You beat me, I'll join your party. And I said, and the spirit of fire, enters you, Tim. However, because you lost and you surrendered, that demonic soul or that demonic presence also kind of hijacks in there. And so I gave him a new bond, which is called Demon Soul. And it's a very powerful bond. So he can use it to get a really big bonus to any dice roll. But every time he uses it, it ticks a clock. And we put a new clock up. And I think it has 8 ticks or something, or 10 ticks. And the idea being that when that fills up, something in the narrative, presumably bad, is going to happen. My point is, Tim died in that fight, and everyone was like, this is sick. Sure, his character is possessed by some sort of unknown demon soul, but now he can draw upon that demon soul. But his character is very obsessed with, defending his people from the imminent destruction, dare I say genocide, at the hands of the Empire. So, would Tim be willing to pay any price in order to keep his people safe? I think he would. So will Tim be using this bond excessively in order to make sure that he's, landing hits and all this other stuff? I think he will. So no one saw this as a loss. No one saw this as a victory. They just saw it as a cool series of moments happening. My point is, nobody was really cared. No one really cared if they beat the box properly. You know what I mean? But when I see a lot of people talking about Fabula Ultima, I see them talking about optimization. I see them talking about wombo combos. I see them talking about what they're going to take in the next 5 levels, 10 levels, 15 levels, 20 levels. My group has no plan for what characters they're going to attack. In fact, Tim, who had no interest, now that he's got this guardian spirit of fire in him, is thinking about going into the Arcanist job, which is, kind of the summoner job. He had no intention of doing that. He doesn't even really sure if he's going to be good at it, but it sounds cool, and he thinks it would lean into what happened in the fiction. And everyone's like, yeah, that's cool. So this is the problem that I think Daggerheart has as well, and Fabula Ultima has as well, which is when you have a game that is mechanical and narrative, and there's mechanics for both, it can create some intense tension, and you can get some really wide discrepancies in the ways that your people play the game. Now, luckily for me, everybody's on the same page, my players, that is, and me. But a lot of times I feel like when I see other people talking about Fabula Ultima, I'm like, wow, I feel like we're playing completely different games. And so that's why I would say that Fabula Ultima, good game, but from a design perspective, it presents a really significant challenge. And I think Daggerheart does as well. Vin says it's a feature, not a bug. Perhaps. But I do see people struggling with this. Daggerheart is a bigger game, obviously, than Fabula Ultima, despite just coming out. And you can see people being like, really, having a hard time wrapping their head around this idea. And because it's kind of like holding 2 different opinions in your head at once. So, Goblins and Android. What kind of games am I thinking about running? Well, there's a couple. I mean, with Torchbearer, right, we ran a fairly traditional campaign, 8 to 10, 8 to 12 sessions. People sign up and we'll play weekly, bi-weekly, probably somewhere between weekly and monthly, and play through that system. And I think we'll definitely do some of that as well, with some systems that I think people are excited to play with. But one idea which I have, which may or may not look, Again, it's optional. You don't have to play it, right? There's a part of me that wants to run a West March. I hate using that term because, again, West March was just the name of a campaign, and that campaign was just running a old school D&D campaign. That's it. But that's what people call it. So I want to run a West March, and not a mega game. I would be the only GM, and it would almost certainly be a mega dungeon. Probably, possibly, Rapana Thuk, or maybe Shadow Deep if it's anywhere somewhere in creation far enough along. And I'm highly tempted to use 3rd edition D&D. Now, I could also see a world where I use some sort of old school system, or even PBTA, like Dungeon World. But there's a part of me that really wants to run a 3rd edition. But before you get excited, but this would kind of sort of be a pay to win, sort of a pay to win campaign, because people will buy character slots with tickets. This is the way that our things work. But in our school, or in our Discord, we have people who have more tickets, people who pay more money. And if you say buy a character with, say, golden tickets, I will give you, 5d6 drop low. Or if you want a multi-class or take a prestige class, it's a gold ticket, or maybe a couple hundred silver tickets. Oh, it's an amazing and horrendous idea. Let me be very clear about this. And the other thing is too, is there's very little fairness, in that respect. Meaning, like, you could drop all those tickets on your character and you're still very likely to die, which is why I would go with something like Rapana Thuk, which is known as the Dungeon of Graves. It is quite deadly. So yes, 100% pay to win. Very much so. You would know that going in. So, anyways, I would try to avoid micro transactions. They would be more like mega transactions. But to be clear, you're not. Let me be very clear about something here. This will make me no money. Okay. Because all of the people who I'm describing already have hundreds of tickets. So they're not even going to they're not going to upgrade. You know what I mean? All the people on my server who are $25 and $50 and $100 a month members, they have been that for years and they get nothing. You know what I mean? For the most part. Maybe they bought a shirt or something. So to be clear, when I say that this is pay to win, it's not really, because no one's going to pay me more money, so James Scott says, those are crazy people. Meanwhile, if I go over to the Discord, let's take a look here. Bring up this here. Meanwhile, GM Scott has 3,235 silver tickets and 84 gold tickets. So, yeah. Needless to say. So anyways, my point is it's not really pay to win, because I'm not actually going to make any more money from this, because almost everybody has so many more tickets than they need. So anyways, that's definitely a lot of chocolate bars. See, almost all of my patrons have never done anything with their tickets. For sure. So anyways, it's more of a fun thing for people to do, and, to throw your tickets around, and, and it's a pointless currency. Most of the people who almost 99% of the people who get my tickets or upgrade are just so that they can, just because they support me. They didn't ask for tickets. You're not buying anything. Like, it's more of a way for me, because the real issue is when I go and do something like run a campaign, I have to decide who gets in that campaign or not. So it's really just a way to sort of say, hey, thank you for, dropping $500 a year or $1,000 a year, and you get first dibs. Not everybody wants to play. Not everybody has to play. In fact, most of the people with a lot of tickets end up giving a lot of tickets away to other people so that they can play in games as well. So, and again, that's only to play games with me, just because my time is so limited. If I had infinite time, I would just play with everybody, right? So you get tickets depending on your tier. If you are a champion, which is our $10 a month, you get 10 tickets. It's sort of more of just like so that you can, over the course of a year, maybe get enough tickets to like get some of our PDFs and stuff like that. Because originally we were going to do, at least a couple PDFs a year. Right now, I think we only have like 3 or 4 that you can buy. Hero, which is 25, gets 100 silver tickets. Exalted, which is $50, gets 200, and I think Legend gets 300. So it basically scales to the point where it doesn't even matter. But yeah. Anyways, so that's one idea that I have, which is to run a West Marches, but I would run it, okay, like a proper West March, which is to say that if we were to play, today's January 11th, if we were to play today and your characters went onto the adventure and you spent, in that session, several weeks passed, then your character would not be playable again until, say, January 26th. So 14 days from now. So if you spend time in the game, in the session, then you're spending that time in real life too, because it's 1 day per day. And so if you wanted to play again before your 2 weeks, you would need to buy a new character. So you'd have actually multiple characters. Or if somebody wants to craft a magical item, great. How long is that magical item going to take? 10 days. Cool. Well, then you can make that magical item on the 11th, but you and your item and your character will not be available until the 21st of January. So, no, so the pay to win will not be for like cheating in that way, Sweet Threat, because again, it's not really pay to win. It's more of just like a fun way to sort of get to that. But again, I cannot stress this enough. It will make me no money. So no, we're not talking about a way to give me money. Garblag, by the way, tonight we are going to be doing a first look at Garblag's game, Heroic Deeds. So that's tonight, Garblag. So it says, love the lockout concept. It's something I'm going to add to the mega game rules for Heroic Deeds. Encourage multiple characters per player. Love the original Dark Sun suggested character trees. Yeah, so we're going to be looking at Heroic Deeds tonight, actually. But yeah, it's just, there's a lot of people. It's more like pay to lose slightly less. That's probably a good way to describe it. Correct. Anyways, I haven't 100% decided what I'm going to do. But needless to say, it will be, designed such that the things that people love about third edition that I hate about third edition will be exceedingly expensive. like if you want a multi-class, you're gonna have to pay a bounty of tickets. Like if you just want to be a single class character, it would be pretty cheap. But if you want a multi-class, that that costs a lot more tickets. If you want to get a prestige class, it costs a shitload of tickets. Because I hate those things. And we'll also be restructuring the game. That's why I said that's right. The first class is free. That's right. And if you have no tickets, I would still probably let you make a character, but you'll have to use like 3d6 straight or something. It's like a self-enforced challenge mode, Vin. Absolutely. Right? Like how much can you car op, within that structure? But remember too that this is why, again, also too, like what was I going to say? Some of the stuff might have to be unlocked by the group. So like something like a factotum or a binder might not be available with the starter. Like you might only start off with the 11 classes from the player's handbook or something like that. And there would also be some other changes that I would make. I mean, these are changes that I made a long time ago in my 3rd edition campaign, which is like what gives you experience. There would be experience points for treasure. Actually, the way I do it is I don't actually give experience points for treasure. I give experience points for hordes. So it's not like you just literally get 1 gold for every single thing that you find. You just get, like, if you find a big treasure, it has a certain EL or a certain experience point value attached to it. But what I usually do is I double or triple the amount of XP that you need to level. So if you're just doing it through combat, it's going to be a big deal. Yeah, you have to be a halfling ranger. It's 100% true. And because this is Rapanathuk, for those of you who don't know about Rapanathuk was written for 3rd edition, and it was written in a very old school manner, which means like the first level of the dungeon has like EL 10s, so like you're gonna die. I mean, you're gonna die. I don't know how to describe it. Yeah, I've covered these rules before, Pumpkin. I have on the channel, so I have talked about them before. Well, sort of milestone. Usually what I do is I award experience points for combat, or I should say I award experience points for defeating your foes. Not outsmarting them, nothing like that. I give you experience points for defeating your foes. Then I give you experience points for exploration. And then I give you experience points for lore. And then I lastly give you experience points for treasure. So basically, there's a 4-pillar model where you are encouraged to get treasure, explore, learn, and kill stuff. And in my view, in my estimate, those 4 things are the exact 4 things that I want to do in a dungeon. I want to kill stuff. I want to look around. I want to learn about the dungeon. I want to kill monsters, and I want to loot treasure. And if I'm doing those 4 things, those are the 4 things that I want to reward. So that's how my game systems work. And so in a theoretical world where I have tripled the amount of experience points that you need to level, if you are just killing monsters, it's going to take you a long time to level up. But if you are killing monsters and exploring and getting treasures and learning lore, if you do all 4 of those things, you may potentially be able to level up even faster, maybe. But more important than that, Sapphire Crook, you're right on the money. If there's something that your group or your party or your individual or that situation doesn't seem great, avoid it. And you're not going to be punished by the game. A group of scholarly rogues with like a diviner wizard and a sorcerer rogue or something like that, who isn't maybe really good in combat, could play an entire session. They could explore a bunch of areas of the dungeon, find a bunch of secret doors, find a new entrance to level 3, find a treasure hoard, pick the lock, get past the trap, loot the treasure, learn a secret of the dungeon, and have an extremely successful, by the measure of you gained a lot of experience points, encounter or session, but not have killed anything. So, and that's exactly the point. Whereas if you had a party of, fighters, barbarians, just, a sorcerer who only took fireball, maybe that group isn't, maybe they're not disarming too many traps. They're going straight. Hey, we heard that there's a massive community of orcs led by a couple ogres. We're going to go there and we're just going to kill. Per party. What do you mean by? I mean, the party the session we would split the XP for sure. We would split the XP per session. Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yep. Dragon's Delve was the name of that campaign for sure. Right. Finding traps means different things to thieves and barbarians. The other thing is because it's a dungeon and because real time matters, my hope is that your group will be encouraged to go and push as far as you can without taking a rest. Because if you rest, that's going to add time to your lockout. And so, yes, like a group, a group could probably have an easier go with it if they kept, resting, recovering, sleeping, resting, recovering, sleeping. But they might end up spending 10 or 15 or 20 days in that session between trips to town and back. And, we'll kind of hand wavy them and, you get back to town. Okay. That's fine. But then you're not gonna be able to play your character for to the rest of the month. So, okay. For sure. There's big torchbearer flavor here for sure. Do characters get the same XP per session? Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I wouldn't have individual XP awards, if that's what you're asking. No. Now, you might play with a different group and you might get a very different amount of experience points, of course, but yeah. Well, again, my goal here isn't actually to make money, and I don't want to make it easy. That's actually the opposite of what I want to do. So while I'm fine, like having people have access to like better stats and being able to multi-class and stuff like that, I don't want to remove the part of the game that actually, for me, is the fun part. So something like that, I would probably more or less avoid if I could. Well, Smendon, it is well known that my preference is 3rd edition. It's the same, right? That's what everybody says. Everyone's asking 3.3.0. For me, the main difference is I like the spells a lot better in 3rd edition. So also 3rd edition actually has affordable raised dead. So I don't know why people like 3.5. Their characters must have never been dying when they were playing 3.5. Maybe that's the problem. In 3.5, a raised dead was 5,000 gold. In 3.0, it was 500. By 3.5, fudging was already in place. Nice 42 bits for 42. Everyone knew where their towel was in 3rd edition. Thank you, Stormbender. Yeah, again, too, it's I can't speak to every dungeon, but I can tell you Rapanathuk is very unfair. So, because 3rd edition has this problem where all the cool monsters are kind of lame when you fight them at the level where you're supposed to fight them. Like by the time you fight a Medusa, like everyone is like you're able to remove petrification and people have really good fort saves. And it's kind of like, now if you fight a Medusa and you're level 3 or 4, suddenly, because like the gaze DC is like 13 or something like that, or 14. But if you're only level like 3 or 4, it's scary. And it should be. So, which I think is great. So needless to say, my game and it's actually literally on my bedside stand. My game, there is no such thing as balance. Like when Necromancer Games wrote it, there's no. I think like level 2 of the dungeon has like a CR17 in it or something. It's crazy. There's no balance whatsoever. of course there's retreat mechanics. What's your character's speed? What's the monster's speed? Is it higher? All right, I guess you get away. But third edition doesn't have Warblades. No, it does not. Although, honestly, I don't think Warblades and Crusaders and God, what are they called? Sword Sages. I don't even know if they feel right in a sort of pulpy dungeon crawl game. Don't they feel like they're too cool and awesome and stuff like that? Is there an appeal to games where you can literally just do nothing? Yes. It's called gambling, and it's the most popular game in the world. Like you can, you can play your hand right. It's like Magic the Gathering. You can make decisions that will help you, but at the end of the day, you're kind of screwed otherwise. There was a spell. I don't think it was in third edition. Maybe it was. It was called Gaze Reflection. It was in the AD&D second edition. And it was a spell that was specifically required. It was a wizard spell that was specifically designed to protect you from gaze attacks, from basilisks, medusas, vampires, charming gazes, the eye bite spell, and the like. And I think it's just a reflection. It's a reflective example of how the mindset was made in the original D&D game, which is that the idea was that if you were prepared, then you deserved your victory. If you were not prepared, you deserved your loss. The modern mindset of we should be able to go in against any encounter that is CR balanced for us and win, regardless of what our party's composition or level of preparation is, I think is a very boring way to play that style of game. Maybe very clear to play that style of game. I completely get it. It's not for everybody at all. 100%. You never do nothing in Magic? I disagree. I played a lot of Magic games where I did nothing.
Goblins and Androids tipped $5. Any chance for a One Ring game for the Patreons? And how much do I need to tip to make it in
What's
EU
up, G&A? G&A asking about a One Ring game. That would be high on my list as well, G&A, for sure. Because my group did not wisely, my home group did not choose to play. Did not choose to play the One Ring for our home game. We chose Fab Ultima, which I think was the right choice for a variety of reasons. But that being said, I obviously still think that game's amazing. It was my game of the year. And while I am going to be running it solo through my Moria one-shot, how much do you need to tip to make it an EU game? G&A, it really just comes down to how can we get the players together? And obviously, I have a lot of freedom and flexibility because of my schedule. So, I'm willing to make some exceptions so that we can hopefully get a cool game together. And if I can find 3 or 4, excited, passionate players who can make a time work, I'd love to make that happen for my own selfish reason. I'm not going to run a game, even if the patrons want me to, that I don't want to run. I'm not going to do that. So obviously this is a game that I want to run, so for sure. Anyways, how do I throw tickets on you to get the West Marches game running? I got some other things I have to kick off first. I have to make sure that Dragon Tide and Northern Reaches, the existing mega games, are properly set up. We have already tipped for our Moria solo chat plays Moria. So I need to get this ready. I've been starting to work on this, and I'm not gonna lie. I really want to do a Wilder Feast mega game. Okay. And then there's also this idea of like, do we want to do like a hyper tactical game like Lancer or Beacon? And again, because we're in this sort of off period, something like Northern Reaches sometimes usually doesn't kick off until like May. And especially because we used to try to run our mega games for 9 months. And now we've sort of figured out that 9 months is too long. So we've been shrinking. We've been trying to shrink down the seasons and, 6 months to maybe even less potentially. And we know that like things drop off precipitously in September. So there's a lot of people who like want to like start April, May and kind of end in like September. And so potentially, we have another 3-4 months without a mega game active. And that's why I'd love to do something for Lancer or Beacon, maybe something for Wilder Feast. And then, but so once we get all those things kind of situated and I get all of that stuff situated, I'm definitely going to run some games here. So just keep your eyes peeled. It'll be out there. And again, I'd love to do the thing with the West Marches too, is it will be like a true West March where I, Derek, usually probably at the start of the week, will post some time slots that I am potentially available, and players can get together and sign up for that if they have a character that is active. If your character's on lockout, then that character can play. And then people can sign up. And then if I get, at least probably 3 people, I would say is the minimum. Because we could run less, but it's not. I don't really want to waste my time running a solo game for somebody. But if we can get 3 people, then we'll probably activate it and we'll go from there. But again, there's a part of me that wants to do 3rd edition, and I'm definitely interested in 3rd edition just because I think it'll be fun. But we'll see what actual game session it is. Let's see here. Spell that negates gaze attack specifically sounds awful. I mean, yeah, it didn't make it into 3rd edition, so I'm guessing the people with the powers that be agreed with you. Everyone loves being milled. Oh yeah, it's great. I think it's a legitimate way to win. I think it's totally fine. So Patreon is out, yeah, or Ryotama is out. Yeah, probably Ryotama is out. I want to see the Tor Solo too as well. I think it's a great game. So all right, Seabeard, you can figure that out. All right, Hackmaster Reaches, not quite, but I do want to run a game of that in person with Tim and Bob and stuff. Now that we have the studio up and running. Wouldn't a dungeon like that be more fun with 13th Age, or does the lack of icons break it? No, I don't think it has anything to do with the icons. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest with you, I know people hate it, but I think a game like that would work really well with 5th edition D&D. I think the short rest mechanic, the long rest mechanic in a game, like in a real dungeon game, where time actually matters, it actually becomes very important and powerful for sure. And here's how you get the real, okay? And this, I'm spilling too many beans. Should I spill? Maybe I'll spill. Okay. You may be familiar with an optional rule from 5th edition where the long rest takes a week. So I might do something similar to that in my game and to help control spellcasters. So in other words, it will take you a week to recover your spells. And the same thing would be true in like if I ran it like 5th edition, for example, where you could but Zen Bullets, number one, I already did implement that. Dungeon Time Extreme used I'm not talking about 5th edition. I'm talking about for 3rd edition. But again, third edition doesn't have short rests. I'm just thinking of taking that rule from 5th edition and applying it in third edition. The long and the short of it is, when you are a spellcaster, because the problem that I have with this model is that a session is 3 to 4 hours. And if a spellcaster has all of their spells every time they adventure, it is going to be very powerful. And I mean, that's the case for almost every game. So what I can do is if a spellcaster chooses to, pray or go to nature to recover their spells or spend time, whatever, then your character enters into a +7 day lockout. So let's say we adventure, today's the 11th, and the fighters and the rogues and the barbarians and the wizards, and we all go adventure, and we end up adventuring on the 11th, in our session, and 2 or 3 days pass in real time. So then it's like, okay, you won't be able to play again until the 14th. Okay. If you choose to, whatever, to rememorize your spells, you're going to get an additional 7 day lockout on top of that, or some amount of time, 5 days. I'd have to play with it. And so as a spellcaster, you're going to be extremely powerful. But if you use all of your spells, no one can rest in the dungeon, not for days at a time. No. By definition, the long rest is in town. Pacing for what, though? Pacing for what kind of game? I mean, the term pacing implies that there's some sort of big bad evil guy, trying to take over the world, which is not the case in the standard D&D model. But Mishi, so I love what Nimble did. Quadruple thumbs up. Love it. Absolutely love it. I love the distinction. Again, played Torchbearer. In our Dungeon Time Extreme game, we did, we basically kind of used again, it's from 5th edition. We used sort of the short rest. I don't even know if people, I've discussed this before, but I will see. I will bust out my, my tablet. See if this works here. Whiteboard time. All right. Okay. All right, here we go. Perfect. Beep boop. Yeah, you can hear it being connected. Yeah. When does my Moria start? Joshua, great question. I am leaving. I'm here over the next couple of weeks, and I'm leaving next week. Not next week, but like the week after that, for a couple of days. My buddy is taking me on a cruise, and I'll be back at the end of January. And then I think we'll probably try to start it in February, early February. But what about 2nd edition? Do you mean like 2nd edition? You mean like 2nd edition? 2nd edition? like AD&D 2nd edition? I mean, I think that'd be cool, but I don't know how well that would really work, and I don't really think there's too much that really supports that game anymore, so I'd be hesitant to do that for sure. That's right, GM Scott. It's the whiteboard time. Yeah. I mean, that would be interesting, but yeah. No, I don't think so. I don't know. I think it would be more fun as like an experiment. I would be more likely to do that, Commander Snookums, as a like a mini campaign, and I'd run an AD&D campaign, and let people mess around with it from that perspective, rather than running it as a a thing. All right, let me get my little feet out here. Okay. All right. Let me switch. All right. Check. Check. All right, there we go. So for those of you who do not, for those of you who don't know, the way that the Dungeon Time Extreme worked, was you had, you had strength, dex, con, you had all the stats. And two of those stats, Constitution and Wisdom, were tied to two stats called, this was tied to a stat called, I can't actually remember if I called it Endurance or Resilience. But Wisdom was definitely tied to a stat called Willpower. And this was equal to the stat. So if your con was 14, then you had 14. And the way that it worked is every ability that your character had on your character sheet, more or less, had a chart or a section. There was a, so it would, I'm trying to draw it from memory here. So it would say like ability, resource, and then it would have this like something that looked like that, and then it would say reset. Okay, I'll just call that the track. Okay, and good night, GM Scott. It was good having you around, buddy. So the way it worked is you might have something like this, which would say rage, and the resource would be endurance, and the cost to rage might look like this, and it might reset. Now remember, in my game DTX, a short rest was 8 hours sleep in camp, and a long rest was a week in town. Right. And so this is why with Nimble had like the camping thing. Now I didn't really have like a short rest, but and so like the reset on rage, I don't actually remember what the reset on rage was. I think it was probably a short rest. Okay. And so what this basically meant was, let's say that your barbarian had a 14 con, so you had 14 endurance. Now, one of the key things about endurance and willpower is they basically only restored on a long rest. There was very limited ability to recover them, even in a short rest. And so if your barbarian raged, it would cost 1 point of endurance. So you're down to 13. And then if you rage again, the second time that you would rage, it would cost 2 endurance. And then the third time you raged, it would cost 3 endurance. So then your character would go and take a short rest. Now remember, in my game, short rest was 8 hours sleeping in a camp because of the gritty house rule. When you short rested, this track would reset. That's what the reset short rest meant. And so now, if you were to rage again, essentially tomorrow, it would cost you 1 endurance, and you would mark that, and it would progress down. So this was Dungeon Time Extreme. my game, DTX. That's terrible. There we go. Hold on a second. Okay, good. I had to change something real quick. And so there were different abilities that, everything from like, Bardic Inspiration to you name it, Warlock's abilities and stuff like that. Everything was on this track. And some things reset on a rest and some things reset on a long rest. Some tracks looked differently. Some tracks could look like a track might look like this: 0, 1, 2, 4, 8. Like the first time you use it, it's free. And the second time you use it is 1, but the third time is 2, and then it's 4, and then it's 8. Or a track could look like, it could look just like this: 2, 2, 2, 4, 4. Or it could just be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Or it could just, you know what I mean? Like there was you could have different types of attrition attacks, depending on whether it was and the reset of short and long. And then you can manage these willpower and you can manage these endurance. I did not do a backwards one. That would be kind of cool, honestly, where it becomes cheaper the more you do it. I actually think that's kind of neat. We never messed with that, but it's a cool way to make a class feel different for sure. Anyways, so the again, nothing was really play tested. We were just pulling stuff out of our ass. But the long and the short of it was your magic was based off of the level of the spell, right? And so following the 5th edition rules, you would memorize or prepare, or whatever the term is that they use. And you would slot in your spells, and then as you cast from those spells, they would eat up your willpower. Okay. Oh, Twitch is spamming. Of course it is. But there's something else which we'll get to in a second. I have to hop onto Twitch so I can ban this person, this bot. Okay, there we go. All right. Yeah, just this spammer bot. So there were a couple of caveats. One was endurance. Okay, remember there was the 2 resources. One was endurance and one was willpower. And whatever your con stat was, that's how much endurance you had, and whatever your wisdom stat was, that's how much willpower you had. Your endurance equaled your hit dice. Okay. So if your con was a 16, then your endurance was a 16. And that meant that you had 16 points to spend. So as a barbarian raged, they would be using up their endurance. Now remember, you can only spend your hit dice when you take a short rest. A short rest is 8 hours sleeping in camp. Now, in normal D&D 5th edition at level 1, you get 1 hit dice. Well, in my game, you had like 14 at like level 1. To be clear, I never expected for this game to go beyond probably honestly AD&D 2nd edition level. I mean, I know Vin would hate it, but if I ever actually made DTX would be designed for 1 to 10. Like there might be something beyond DTX, like almost like, BX D&D, like Dungeon Time Extreme becomes, I don't know, Nation Time, Nation Time Camp, Kingdom Time Extreme. But it was I never really imagined it ever going beyond level 10. So Vin is here. Boo. Well, at that point, you're not really the D&D game does not support dungeons beyond that level. It's not designed to. By the time you're level 10 or 11, you can raise the dead. You can, in every other instance of the universe, 10 is the max. Just saying. It goes to 10. I gave it a 10. Well, D&D doesn't use a D12, and neither did Dungeon Time Extreme. Dungeon Time Extreme used a 20. Anyways. But where was I? So endurance equaled your hit dice. And willpower equaled reroll, or I guess you would call it inspiration. We didn't have inspiration, and inspiration before the roll is lame anyways. And so basically, the way this worked is spellcasters wanted to save their willpower so that they could cast spells. More physical classes, like a barbarian or a fighter, tended to not have as many abilities that used willpower, which meant that their willpower was kind of available for them to make a bunch of rerolls on saving throws, on attack rolls, and the like. And same thing with endurance. Spellcasters tended to not have really high constitutions, so they tended to have lower endurances, but that meant that they could use those endurances pretty freely to recover hit points. Whereas if you were a barbarian or a fighter, you may not want to you had to be a little bit more mindful of your hit points, because if you lost too many hit points as a fighter or barbarian, you would have to go to camp, you'd have to rest, and you'd have to convert your hit dice into you'd have to spend endurance in order to heal, just like using hit dice in D&D 5e. But that meant you had less of that resource available to rage or action surge. And yes, something like action surge used this track as well. There was nothing in my game that was like once a day. So everything used this track system. And yes, as you got higher level, certain things on the track would become potentially cheaper, or the price would shift, or things of that nature and the like. We also never really got around to it, but we did have this idea that certain parts on the track would become like supercharged. And so like when you did your fourth rage, it would be like a super rage or like a mega rage or something like that. We had a bunch of different ideas kind of tied around the idea of resource management. But it was basically, even though people don't really understand it, it was D&D for Smith, who wanted to play D&D, plus PBTA for Derek, plus resource management board game. That is what DTX actually was in combination. So it was really just managing these different resources. And while we're on the topic, charisma gave you, I think we called it resonance. And resonance was your ability to use magical items. So you couldn't use unlimited scrolls per day. You couldn't use unlimited potions per day. Every time you used an item, it cost you resonance. In order to equip an item, it cost you resonance. And so at a certain point, after you ran out of resonance, so even charisma, so the idea was to make every stat important. And every stat, believe it or not, got tied to a resource. Some of the resource, except for Dex, we never came up with a good resource for Dex. I was messing with a reaction system for Dex, but I never really quite figured it out, so I never was able to get to it. Some of the resources were less exciting than others, but and of course my party being a bunch of 40-year-old men, strength resource was called load, which, to be clear, is what the One Ring calls it. Okay, so the One Ring called it, but this was entirely based off of the resonance thing from beta, 100%. From PF2, from the beta, it was 100% based off of that. So my idea with Dex was OP. So I didn't feel like, we all knew this, right? Even back, even Derek, who didn't know anything about 5th edition, because remember, I don't know how to play 5th edition. I never actually really read the book. My idea was to probably get rid of, like, if I were to take like an extreme view of 5th edition, honestly, and these were the ideas that I was having 3 or 4 years ago, I would probably end up a lot where Evan ended up with with nimble, what I would probably have ended up doing is I would get rid of Dex's bonus to AC entirely, and Dex would instead be used for some sort of reaction system. Except unlike nimble, the way my system would work would basically be armor would be DR always, okay? Unlike nimble, where you have to spend, right? So armor is DR always, but you can spend your Dex reaction points. This is kind of like a Dragonbane nod, right? To dodge. So basically the idea would be attacks always hit unless you are choosing to dodge. So it makes it a player choice as to whether you want to make a roll to take nothing. Does that make sense? So if you're a character who is really low, Dex, you should probably have armor because you're not going to have a lot of reactions available to dodge. And you're basically everything's going to hit. It's just quicker and faster that way. And because you have armor as a damage reduction, we still get this random roll to basically see if you take any damage. Because if the number rolled is lower than your damage reduction, then, whatever. We can even reverse it and have armor be a dice value, or the armor DR be the dice value, and the damage be constant. And I could just say, you take 5 damage, you roll your D8, and you go 0, 0, 0. It's like being missed, except you didn't get missed. You used your armor and absorbed it. It's functionally the exact same thing, but it's just faster, quicker, player facing, and it's only 1 die roll. And the GM doesn't have to roll. But as a player with a good Dex, you could potentially, instead try to completely dodge the dice or dodge the attack. And of course, heavier armor might have some sort of, minus penalty to, your reactions that are available, to you. I even like the idea of like, if you have no armor, you get like +2 reactions, so like the idea of literally having a character, it's like, I don't have any DR, every attack hits me, but my character has so many reactions per round. It's more like dodge, parry, dodge, parry. And if that character ever gets hit or gets overwhelmed by like a vast number of monsters, then it becomes really useful. The other thing, which I really like about this system, I'm going to reverse it back to my original idea. Okay, ready? Because again, when I ran DTX, I was kind of running it old school, and I was running it really fast and quick and loose. And because of this, I would do something like, 3d6, 3d6 zombies attack you, right? And I might roll 11. It's not even that high of a number. It's actually average. So let's make it ridiculous. Let's make it 15. Okay. Now, let's say that these zombies do d6 damage. I'm just being very, very productive, very, very, very reductive here for easy purposes. We were playing Theater of the Mind, and we were playing really loosey-goosey. There were no real hard and fast rules. And so, when the zombies, a lot of times I didn't even tell the players really how many zombies there were. It was a real number, but I was like, you don't really fully understand. It's not like you have some sort of, I was trying to make it visceral. I was trying to make it real Theater of the Mindy and really leaning into that. And I didn't want it to feel tactical. Because a real battle in a skirmish in a torch-filled dungeon room is not, despite what people might think, tactical. It's, it's panicking. It's sure there's training, but you're not able to make these kind of true tactical decisions. It's really based off of instinct and reaction. And I wanted that visceralness, that feralness to sort of show through. So I would just describe it as like dozens of zombies break through from the doors. There's swarms of hands and feet, gnawing mouth, decaying flesh in your face, very just, over the top. Anyways, so the idea was, let's say that your fighter, okay, had a DR of 5, or we'll make it 4, okay? Your fighter has a DR of 4. What I could do as a GM is I could be like, and I'm like, what do you do? And the fighter's like, I rush forward and I'm going to draw my sword and my shield. I go, awesome. Okay, fighter. And I literally could just, I go, the first wave of zombies breaks upon you. 8 of them swarm around you, tearing you limb from limb. I could just grab 8d6, roll them on the table, not like a fireball. I could roll 8d6, and I'd be like, wait, fighter, what's your damage? What's your armor value? Whatever. He goes 4. Cool. I roll 8d6. Any of the dice that are 1s, 2s, 3s, or 4, we ignore those. We take those away. The damage that's left, you're taking 1 or 2 points of damage per die. So I could do 8 attacks from zombies in one roll. And yeah, there's a little bit of, how you want to do that math is up to you. But I'm not adding up 8d6. That's the most important part, is I'm basically knocking out all the dice, and then the dice that remain, you take 4 off of. So 5 is 1, 6 is 2. So yeah, for me, that was a doable math. I don't even know if that's a good design, because that might be too much for people. But for me, being able to resolve 8 zombie attacks in probably less than 10 seconds was so worth it. So I could just roll the dice, describe it viciously, do the whole 9 yards, and, it had a bunch of stuff like that. So that was really, really cool for me, really powerful for me, which I really liked. So that is one option that I like. And the reason why I like rolling, and you could have the player roll the dice or something and we do something. I don't remember. We did something once where somebody temporarily boosted their DR. I don't remember how they did it. Oh, they formed a shield wall. I was like, okay. And I was basically like, all right, as long as the 3, because there were 3 people, they all had shields. It was like a fighter, a cleric, and a barbarian. And they all had shields. And I described it. I was like, okay, as long as you maintain the fictional position, because there was no real define. It was a fictional it was a narrative tactical position. I was like, as long as you guys currently you guys gained a new aspect, it wasn't literally an aspect. We weren't playing Fate, but they were holding the wall, holding the line. And it's like, as long as you guys are holding the line, your damage reduction is increased. And so they were able to break, and the bows were able to break and stuff like that. And eventually some of the orcs began to break through and flank them. And again, it was PBTA, right? Because it was Dungeon Time Extreme. Anyways, point is that it was all about super quick, fast play. I don't remember where I got off on this. What would this game look like? Oh, dexterity. Yeah. So long story short, I didn't do anything with dexterity because I didn't have anything that I could think of that I wanted to do with it. So strength was load, was how much you could carry. Constitution was endurance. And intelligence was basically IP from Fabula Ultima. It was a set list of stuff that you could generate. And one of the things that you could do as a player was basically you could almost like a spellcaster. You could have different things on your IP list. And you could prepare for that session, if you will. Just because I didn't want to get into the Dungeon Time Extreme was designed to be a little bit more, pulpy, action packed. And I didn't want to get into the minutia of how many feet of rope do you have? And did you bring this? And did you bring this? And the other thing I wanted to do as a dungeon master, especially in a PBTA minded game that was still D&D, is give myself a ton of levers, ways to punish players or reward them, depending on how the dice rolled went. And so it's really easy to say things like, lose 2 IP, lose a point of resonance from the magical backlash. Your willpower drains in the face of such, evil. Lose a couple points of willpower. Right? It gave me a lot of levers that I could tweak and I could mess with. And that's what I really appreciate about that. Yeah, Yuval, quantum inventory, at least for what I would consider to be normal, basic type stuff. 100% Yuval. Yeah. Again, I didn't really fully map out 100% how I wanted it to be, but I was pretty happy with it in general. But when we made this game, Fabula Ultima, the first core book had come out, and I was like, oh, this is great. I love this system, and it's cool and stuff like that to have specific potions and specific items and stuff like that. But for a lot of the minutia and a lot of the minor stuff, I didn't really care so much. And so I like the idea that an intelligent character would be prepared. And so your PC, right, was smarter than you, the player. And so the idea is that an intelligent character knew to bring the thing that you, the dumb person playing them, didn't know to bring. Does that make sense? So it was sort of to reinforce that idea. It was to give you this, oh, well, my wizard's really smart. I should also point out, by the way, that all spellcasting used int and wisdom. So even wizards used wisdom. There was no cleric charisma caster, like that nothing like that worked. Everything was based off of these 6 stats in wisdom charisma. Like, so there was no dump stat basically in the game. But that was the gist of it. I don't remember how we got in this conversation. And it should go without saying, by the way, that torches and supply and food and stuff like that were an issue, which is where the strength load came from. And obviously, it was a treasure for XP game. So the amount of XP that you got was directly related to how much treasure you got. So the stronger your characters were, the more load points that you had, the more treasure you were able to carry, and thus the more XP you were able to get. So strength was really important. So it's like every character kind of wanted every stat, basically. Yeah, I mean, it's a quantum inventory. It's like a flashback. It's like, I knew to bring this. I knew to bring a shovel. I knew to bring a crowbar. I knew to bring a cooking pan. I knew to bring a grappling hook. All the basic stuff. All that stuff in 5th edition that people write down on their character sheet when they make their character, and then it literally never gets touched. And like your character's like 17th level fighting god babies in the abyss, and they still have like a crowbar and an iron cooking pot and 50 feet of rope, and it's like literally never been touched in 19 levels of D&D. It's that shit. It's that basic adventurer's kit type stuff. But yeah. Oh, PF2 is way worse. You are 100% right, Cal. Correct. Yes. Right. It has to be there, because if it's not D&D, if it doesn't have it, even 4th edition D&D had it. 5th edition D&D has it as well. But I mean, again, my game was, more old school coded and stuff like that. And, a lot of times if you had a cool piece of gear, I would be like, okay, you get advantage or something like that. And, you spent the resource and it felt somewhat earned. We didn't really get into it, but in theory, any of these resources, I only used willpower and endurance, but in theory, this could have been, it could have been IP or it could have been load. I don't know how that would work, but I'm sure you could come up with a situation where a character did all that. Oh, listen, Yuval, let me be very clear about this. I mean, if you watched my Torchbearer campaign, I love the idea of managing inventories very specifically. I think that's a really, really cool idea. In fact, I spent a tremendous amount of time in Torchbearer designing this VTT space so that players could, manage their inventory together as a group, because all of the inventory is done on the VTT screen, not on your character sheets. That way everyone can see everyone's inventory at once. So yeah, we played around with this idea of load, but then load is tied to strength, and I didn't know how I felt about that and all this other stuff. And yeah. So that's where I kind of got into it. It was kind of weird stuff. DTX playtest document 1. When? There we go. Now we're talking. I complete this game, and then we play this as the mega game. There you go. Or as the West March. I like it too, the Goblin's Android. It really just depends on the campaign and what's going on. It's just that 9 times out of 10, like I care if a player has the right potion or like a cool magical item, but whether they brought some random piece of chalk or not, I think is weird. And it tends to I don't know. There's no cost to carrying that stuff 99% of the time. And so people just carry it all, and it doesn't really matter if they carry it or not. I don't know. There's a strange overlap between it. Like in Torchbearer, you had 8 slots for your inventory, maybe, 6 slots for your inventory, maybe. And so carrying a piece of gear in Torchbearer was a really significant, big deal. So there you go. Well, so we didn't get into this, but one of the things that I've always wanted to do is create a way to simplify hirelings and henchmen. And so one of the ways that I thought about doing it was literally having you have a henchman, and while you have that henchman, you have
you have like a torchbearer or like a pack bearer, and you have +4 IP as long as that pack bearer is alive. And like I don't really worry too much about their their stats and stuff like that as well. Things of that nature. I mean, as a narrative consequence, as a result of a combat or an action, I might kill them for sure. But like I really love how Sean Tompkins in his Moria game, how he does your companions, right? Where the companions are basically set up to give your character, like they don't really have stats themselves. They're set up to give you, right, bonuses. And then if you're in a really, really tough spot, you can basically cash in your ally to basically save your main character, but your ally probably dies. So I thought that was a really cool system. Because what I really want henchmen to be in like an old school game, this is like going more to BX, I really want them to be like red shirts. In the sense that like I want them to be there so that death is on the table, but it's not always just our PCs. Sometimes sometimes the main character will die. But I want there to be death. I just don't always want to be my PCs. So anyways. But yeah, right. The GM just gives everyone a bag of holding at level 1 and calls it a day. You don't even have to anymore. Like some of these games, like Pathfinder 2, right, makes a week of food light load. So, but yeah, inventory space is essentially unlimited in modern D20. I completely agree. Yeah, we never developed it, Yuval, but if we had some sort of henchman system, I could see charisma maybe changing or expanding from a resource to be more of a loyalty resource or some sort of command resource or something like that. Yeah. Correct. You mean Fellowship, like the PBTA game? It's been a long time since I read that, so I don't remember. It does. I don't remember what they were, but I remember being impressed. I need to get second edition at some point. But yeah, it's like a death butler. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, again, this isn't right or wrong. I'm not trying to say that this is the one true way to resolve this. I'm simply just saying that for this game, it's what I wanted to do. I wanted my Dungeon Time Extreme to basically be a sort of an action dungeon crawler. And so that's kind of what we were trying to go for here. I didn't want them to spend a bunch of time hemming and hawing about whether they should bring the crowbar or if they should bring, another set of climbing pitons. Like that just wasn't what I wanted to care about. It certainly wasn't interesting to me. And so then, kind of go into that from that perspective. The other thing too is, like I said, is it made it so that, now to be clear, if someone really wanted to bring something, they could still buy it and bring it. It would just use their load, It's kind of actually similar. Now that I've seen the rules for it, I might actually take some of the rules from Coriolis for supply, actually, which I thought was a really cool system. So I might actually steal that from Coriolis that we covered the other day. So, oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Forbidden Lands is absolutely crazy. Because you have so limited inventory space, and then, yeah, getting an animal it's a huge deal. The One Ring is massively like that. Like, I lost my pen and it went into the ether and it clicked my mouse and everything. In the One Ring, when you go on a journey, right, each event that you encounter adds fatigue to your character's total. And so like that event might have given you, that event may have had, or that journey may have had 3 events. You're going to get 7 fatigue, which, remember, is basically like permanent hit point loss. But then at the end of the journey, you subtract like 3 or 4 or 5, depending on the quality of your pack beast. So like if you have a good pack animal, this 7 fatigue journey may only cost you 3 fatigue, which is really, really cool. class question, Smendon. I do not have an answer because, again, remember, this was not only was this many years ago, but also there was no design for this game. We just made shit up as we played. Would you just have a base class like a martial and then spellcaster and have kits to make them into what you want, or just go with classic barbarian druid? Well, it depends, Smendon. You have to remember, when I designed, I'm going to use quotes here, when I designed DTX, it was because I had one player who I'm very fond of and like to make happy, and he deserves good things, who basically said, I want to play D&D. I want to play D&D 5th edition. I want to be a cleric. I want to be a fighter. I want to be a multi-class fighter, cleric, dwarf. So my goal was to make D&D and then to play it in such a way that I could live with it, which has involved me adding elements of PBTA and adding elements of resource management that mattered. So this wasn't me designing something from the ground up. However, as I have said many times, if I were to design something from the ground up, I would probably go with, and it was still going to be a class-based system, I would probably have the warrior. Oops, what happened there? I would have the warrior, the expert, and the spellcaster, the mage, the adept, whatever term you want to use. Those would be my core chassis. It was PBTA plus 5e plus 5 torches deep plus resource management subgame. And yeah, so torchbearer. Yeah, so PBTA, 5e, 5 torches deep, torchbearer, a little bit of Fabula Ultima. Yeah, but those were definitely part of the element there. Well, it's funny that you say that, Goblins and Androids, because in my experience, like all the groups, like when I know when Edril played his game, like everybody ended up with like a donkey or a cart, and then it didn't matter anymore. So yes, but also maybe no. I don't know. Out of curiosity, why classes? I think classes are cool. Basically, they're an easy hook-in point. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I play games that don't have classes, or barely have classes. But I mean, I think it's a big part of what makes a fantasy game a fantasy game, you know? I mean, that's one way to do it. You could branch. The other way to do it is that it just gives you an initial set of abilities, and then as the game progresses, you just acquire more and more new abilities at different level points. But this just kind of sets your base capabilities. Something like that. There's a couple different ways. I mean, again, it just depends on how much, because like, again, it's difficult to understand what you're asking about. Like, are you asking about like specifically Dungeon Time Extreme? Because in Dungeon Time Extreme, they would be, features. They would be mechanical features. They would not be diegetic. In fact, I would say that most of the abilities would probably predicate around resource management, because that's really what the game is. I mean, the game is basically an efficiency engine. It's basically a question of, how can you convert your character's resources into gold and XP, right, the most efficiently. That's really what this game was about. How do you convert resources into gold / XP the most efficiently? And, the better you used your resources, the more gold and XP you would get per resource spend to that end. So the problem with classless systems is you don't have any niche protection, and it's possible for characters to end up all looking alike. Like there is a class in Fabula Ultima called the Entropist, and they are the only class in the game that basically gets haste. It's a spell. And it's funny because like my group, we have 3 characters who are entropists. I mean, you have multiple classes in Fabula Ultima, right? You can have, in fact, you have to start with at least 2, but you can start with 3, like from the beginning of the game, because you start at level 5. And every time you level up, you can take a class, pretty much from any class. Anyways, I mentioned that my group had 3 entropists, and people were like, "Oh, they're so good, at all the haste." And I said, no one in my group has haste. We have 3 entropists, and not a single one has haste. But basically, a lot of people who play the game, this gets back to what I was talking about earlier about Daggerheart and Fabula Ultima and how different people approach it. But if you're approaching, entropists from like a you have to win perspective, haste is really powerful. And I've seen a lot of people who basically say, yeah, everyone in my group is at least partially an entropist, so that everyone in my group can cast haste, because it's such like in like the first round of combat or first round of a big fight will be like everybody casting haste on each other. So that's the downside of a classless game, is that a characters can end up looking very samey, and a lot of characters can be very, a lot of characters can end up being very, I've got 4 ranks in this spell. Oh, I got 4 ranks in this spell. I got 4 ranks in this spell. I remember when we were playing PF2 in Smith's game. Right, Smith. This is like a couple campaigns ago. Smith had a Pathfinder 2 campaign called The Dark of Winter. And I think it was at least 3, but it might have been 4 of the 5 PCs had champion archetype with champion reaction and lay on hands. And so, like it was kind of one of those, it was just kind of ridiculous, right? Because like, no, it wasn't special. It wasn't fun. It wasn't interesting. It was just everyone was a champion apparently, for heavy armor, champion's reaction, and lay on hands from a focus spell. And everybody had that, or mostly everyone had that. The sorcerer had it. The fighter had it. You know what I mean? Like everyone had it. It was kind of crazy. It was kind of ridiculous. So the problem with a classless game, you have no niche protection. Characters can end up looking very similar. If there's something that's powerful and useful, a lot of people are going to end up taking it. Yeah. So, well, no, you're not locked into it, because you could just be an entropist and then max 10 and start taking another class in a different class. Like I could start the game as a 1 entropist, 2 weapon master, 2, I don't know, fury, and then take that to 10. And now that's maxed. And now I start taking levels in chanter or something like that. And I could then max fury, and then I could start taking levels in something else. You know what I mean? Like, so you don't even have to master the entropist. Yeah, I'm sure it has other things that you would want or pick up at a time, but so I could, the only way I could get all the way, I could be 10 weapon master, 10 fury, 10 chanter, 10, I'm just guardian, 5, I'm running out of ideas. I don't know. Rogue, 4 elementalist, 1 entropist. Like I could be that character at the end of the game. And I've only ever taken 1 levels of entropist the whole entire game. So you don't really have to. You don't have to do anything with it. You can just have it dipped. But I mean, yeah, you could take other things for it, anyways. But so that's the downside, of a classless system, is that you can, and in fact, I'm going to say something very controversial. Classless, cool. Class, cool. Multi-class, kind of lame. It's kind of the worst of both worlds. It has none of the niche protection of classes, but it doesn't have any of the balance of classless. In fact, multi-classing, by and large, I think we can all agree, because I know you all do it, mostly is taken because it's OP and allows you to break the game. So you know that, obviously. That's why you do it. And don't act like you don't. You do. And so, yeah, it's multi-classing, I think, is in some ways is actually the worst of the outcomes of all. But yeah, like if you're gonna have a multi-class system, I think you should just go with a classless system. Or technically, Fabula Ultima has classes, but they're not really classes the way that we would normally think. I mean, he called them classes, and I wish he would have called them jobs, but that would have been more JRPG appropriate. But I even though Fabula Ultima isn't actually, even though they're called classes, I consider Fabula Ultima classless, right? Where it's basically like, look, you can just there's no you're not preloaded or anything like that. You just pop in there. You just you're designed. The whole game is designed. There is no such thing as a single class character. You literally cannot have a single class character in that game. But yeah, so this is one of the reasons I respect Alias so much. No, yeah, multi-classing is great because it lets you car up. Yep, and the fact that Vin says multi-class is goated indicates everything I need to know, which is that it's it's problematic and it's a problem. So I agree, it's the worst of both. I think it's the worst of both worlds. I don't remember how Trespasser does multi-classing. Commander Snookums, multi-classing equals power. Players want power, and players will optimize the fun out of the games for the sake of power. And you are 100% correct. Especially because, again, most of these games are set up as either combat as sport, or they're set up as campaign as competition. You're there to win, right? You can definitely lose these games. You can TPK, you can lose. So the game has thrown down a gauntlet. Are you good enough? Are you strong enough to beat my game, to beat my adventure, to beat my monster, to beat my boss monster, to beat this dungeon, right? The whole game is set up as throwing down a gauntlet. And so I think it's very natural that players go, all right, fuck, let's go, right? But it just creates just a ton of problems. And again, all of the problems that I talked about with classless systems, you get with multi-class systems without getting any of the benefits of being classless. It's truly horrendous. And the worst part about multi-classing is, well, that's actually kind of the worst part of multi-classing. But the worst part about multi-classing is when they have a class and then they have another class, and multi-class rules exist in this game, and yet for some odd reason, they create a new class that is class AB. Why the fuck does that class do you have multi-classing in your game or not? Why does this class exist? Why do we need this class? Can't I just be, a fighter rogue, or like a fighter cleric, like a fighter wizard? Can I just be a fighter wizard or a fighter sorcerer? Why do we need this other class? And the answer usually is because, well, the multi-class system doesn't really do a good job of handling it. Oh, really? Really? Yeah, it's because it sucked. Because the systems are horrible, and they break down, and there's just horrible problems, and yeah, it's just terrible. So it's just bad all around, And Yuval's correct. It's really so that he's so right. All right, I know I don't know how many PF2 people are in the chat here, but how many PF2 people were a magus and then ended up taking levels in wizard or sorcerer? The answer is all of you. Of course you did. Because you needed more spell slots so that you could cast True Strike before they nerfed it. And Self Confessor that goes, yes. Oh, you guys are horrible. And what the worst part is? You know what? You know what the worst part is? Do you know what the worst part is? I'll tell you the worst part. The worst part is you guys are spiking, right? You guys are spiking like hi ho cherry ho or like Chutes and Ladders. Okay? Like that kind of grimy, under your nails, power gaming, car op, whatever, I could respect. In fact, I did respect it. In fact, I did do it in games like Magic the Gathering, where I was I was paying hundreds of dollars to fly out, play a tournament against other people who were trying their best to destroy me. And I was going to seek as much as I could within the rules of the game to beat and destroy my foes. But then these people spike in a game that is 99% in their advantage. It's like, you know, it's like taking off work for 6 months so that you can like train so that you can go like this foot race with like a 4-year-old. I'm like, okay, cool, dude. You're so cool. Like, yeah, you're going to win anyways. So all of your optimization is kind of pathetic and sad. Obvious says Iron Valley car op. Iron Valley, by the way, is the PBTA solo Stardew Valley game. So now I can respect that, Jake. I can respect the Timmy multiclassing. That's probably the only multiclassing I can respect, Jake. So I can respect that. Let me optimize in a game. I'm going to win anyways. Which is another way of arguing why it's like I almost don't matter. I don't really care if a player group optimizes because you're going to win anyways. What are they doing? They're turning a win into a win. What do I care? You know, I know a lot of GMs out there will be like, "Oh, it's so annoying. My players beat the monster." You know, and I'm like, were they going to not beat the monster? Because I'm pretty sure they were going to beat the monster. Anyways, like what difference does it make to you? I'm going to be completely honest. If I'm playing a game like Pathfinder 1 or D&D 3.x, I'm there for a power fantasy. Don't get me wrong, though. I still love to get into the world and the RP and stuff. Oh, no. Let me be very clear here. I'm not saying that the alternative is just a role play. God forbid me. No. I'm simply saying that, and I absolutely think that there is an element to the power fantasy. I'm just simply saying that I think that the power fantasy is not it can still be done with respect and dignity. Okay. Can I say that? There is something to be said about boring class design. I will also agree with that, Mateo. I don't know what you're talking about. If I didn't car up my party, they'd be dead. I literally hard carry the team. That must just be so good for your ego stroking. I'm so happy for you. It's not about whether you can win. It's about how much you can win. Oh, okay. That makes some more sense. And Karama, I mean, I said that, and as I said that, I realized the answer. Usually it's they beat my monster too fast, so it didn't get to do the cool thing. And you are, of course, 100% right. So. Edmund Reese, I haven't played. I only did the one. I only did the one beta, one shot that I ran of Draw Steel. So I don't know if that would get to feel very samey. It's possible that it could. You're absolutely right. I could see that because everybody uses a heroic resource and everybody kind of looks and plays the same. Yeah, I could see that. And everyone's throwing everybody through a fucking wall. I could absolutely see that. People made that complaint about 4th edition. Right. You're trying to kill the party, but you also want them to survive. It's a very strange position to be in. Yeah. So this is a unique type of spike. Let me see if I can find it here. Let's see. Here we go. Found it. And looking for it. Spike. Um, it's not quite exactly the same thing, but it's one of the subtypes of Spike is an innovator. Now, this is written in the terms of Magic the Gathering, but it applies, I think, very much to tabletop role-playing games. Innovators pride themselves on their ability to judge new cards. Their goal is to find the next broken thing. Their dream is to spawn the next dominant deck, right? So this is a subgroup of Spike. So again, you can apply that to TTRPGs as well. But what you're actually describing is a little bit Johnny-esque as well, Yuval. I spent 2 hours reading this monster block that's 3 times as long as it needs to be. Let me use the cool thing it can do. Yeah, I guess that's a thing. I guess I don't know. Which is also why, like when I play 3rd edition or whatever, like a game like that, like. When I know that there's spells in the game that can just instantly delete my monster, I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I just use the monsters out of the bestiary, out of the monster manual. I don't make them special or super. I don't make these really crazy custom NPCs because the party probably is just going to hit them with a disintegrate and kill them. So I don't really care. So I just like, I'm happy just using like giants and undead and whatever else is out of the monster manual. Or I'll use a complex NPC, I guess, if somebody else wants to go out of their way to make the NPC. But God forbid, it's just going to die in the first round or two. Hard carrying a team is main character syndrome in a multiplayer game. Min-maxing sucks when not everyone's doing it. And you know what, Vulture? I'm going to agree with you on there. I think Vin does have main character syndrome. Right. Yeah, I mean, again, Karama, I mean, you're talking about quote unquote bosses, and like I said, you're talking about crit failing a slow. I had that happen in Abomination Vaults to a boss, Nat 1 done a slow, and I basically just removed the character. But again, I grew up playing, AD&D 2nd edition and 3rd edition, where literally the final villain of the final boss of my 3rd edition campaign, my first 3rd edition campaign, died to a Vorpal Sword attack in the first swing of the round. Just move on, go to the next one. What do you mean the next one is the final boss? Yeah, the next campaign, let's go. Right, because this is the tension that you get with multi-classing, is you need to have the class be front loaded so that you can do the thing that you need to do. I just hate having to like wait for your character to come online. I hate that idea. When people talk about that, it makes me want to stab myself in the face. And then they deliberately handicap themselves just so that they can come online later, but somehow be more powerful. It's horrible. But unfortunately, when you have multi-classing, this fucks you, because now if the class is front-loaded, people will dip it. Ugh, just saying it makes me feel dirty. And then you have these massive problems as well. Take care, Mishi. Peace. Yeah, I mean, buffing and debuffing is fun. I absolutely love that. That's one of the reasons I love 3rd edition over 3.5 and Pathfinder 1. Buffs were good and were way cooler and lasted a lot longer in 3rd edition. As I always say, in 3E, the buff spells were 1 hour per level. In 3.5, they were 10 minutes per level. And in PF1, they were 1 minute per level. And to that I say, lame. Dislike. You wouldn't dip the same Dorito in multiple sauces. Some people are crazy. They would, though. Let's This is why I like Lancer. Every class is 3 levels, and you're supposed to pick up a bunch to build your dumb robot from many parts. Yeah, I mean, Fable Ultima kind of works the same way, which is why I hesitate to call it a class, Karama, you know. Why did they change them on 3.5? Because they didn't want them to last that long. I don't know. Yes, and now the spells last for a minute, right? I mean, I should actually point this out. Actually, in PF2, that spell doesn't last 1 minute per level. It lasts 1 minute. So, I think the main reason they did that is, as Pumpkin says, was to combat or to fight or to, we're using combat words, to prevent pre-buffing. That is why they did that. That's not okay. So Mateo, so here's what we did. This is Derek's house rules. This was true of Pathfinder 1 too. So a great example of a lineage of these spells are the stat buffing spells, right? The Bull Strength, Cat's Grace, Owl's Wisdom, right? The ones that buff your stat. Those follow this progression in the games. They are hour per level in 3rd edition, 10 minutes per level in 3.5 PF1. What we did in our game is if a caster wanted to put a Bull Strength buff on someone, they lost that 2nd level slot permanently. As long as the spell was on, basically. They lost that spot. And we just made it, we didn't track it in hours. We just made it 24 hours. And just let them, cast that up. Because there were certain buffs that involved stat manipulation that we didn't want those to be changing. Something like fire resistance or fire absorption. I was happier being in this space. But when it came to modifying stats, we didn't want to have to change those. So we kind of just made them into like a semi-permanent buff. It ate up. Also, Jake, I grew up playing EverQuest and Asheron's Call and Dark Age of Camelot and all this other stuff. And we loved the buff load up. I'm not going to lie. We loved it. If you look at some of our 3rd edition character sheets later on in levels, they would have a combat sheet, a separate piece of paper that they would basically refresh every session. They would make a new one. And it would basically show on the right side all the buffs that were written on their character. And it was sometimes like 10 to 20 spells. And like a lot of times after a long, quote unquote, a long rest, there would be a period of time where it was kind of like the pre-buff session where it was like, okay, did everybody get, did everybody get this? Okay, who needs fire resistance? And you would just like go down the line and just spread out, resistances and protections and this buff and that buff and whatever, and it was a lot of fun. Or like before you go out in the winter, like you put on your long johns, and then you put on your you put on your jeans, and then you put on your shirt, and then you put on your sweater, and then you get on there's a fleece, and you put on your hat and your gloves and your scarf, and you put up, you zip up, you get on your boots, and you're prepping up to go out, for the day's journey, and that was cool. I mean, we liked it. That was part of what my group liked. We enjoyed that part of the game. So it was not uncommon for spellcasters to spend as much as 50% of their spell slots pre-buffing. And if we were doing that like every 10 minutes, it would just have been a nightmare. So again, that's one of the reasons why I like the longer duration buffs for sure. And I enjoyed the strategic element of of changing. There were certain spells that was just like, hey, like I'll give you a great example. Okay. Once we got to a part of the game, as I recall, like, I think resist energy was 10. I could be wrong here. Resist energy D20 SRD. Yeah, okay, so it was 10, and then it became 20, and then it became 30. And it wasn't unusual for, like, people to, like, cast, like, 2 or 3 or 4 of these on everybody to just kind of, spread the resist energy around to make sure everybody had a base level of protection against whatever random nonsense that they were going to be fighting against. Because this was only a level 2 spell. But the thing that's cool about this spell is clerics got it, druids got it, paladins got it, rangers got it, sorcerers and wizards got it. And in fact, I remember one of my favorite things that people would do once we got to like higher level is I remember like the rangers and the paladins like stepping up and be like, guys, we'll handle the resist energies today. And that was cool because it was like, they got to like participate and get to use the spell because they know that their spells aren't as powerful as the clerics and the druids and the wizards. And it was like, hey, we can add into this spell economy. But because almost everybody in D&D, except for like the fighter, the rogue, and the monk, were spellcasters, everybody had these slots basically just hanging around. I guess the barbarian wasn't either, but everybody had these slots, laying around, and it was just cool to put them out. Now, something like protection from, say, fire, which gave you like an absorb shield, was higher level, and that was more specific, right? Like, okay, we know we're going to fight. We know we're going to go fight a bunch of fire elementals. Let's get some protection from fire on. But I remember that like past a certain point and past a certain element of the game, another thing that remembered is like I remember my wizard would always have a 50 charge. Well, not 50 charge. He would use it up. He would have a wand of resist energy. Now, it was only level 3. So that was only, that was the minimum level that you could cast it because resist energy was a 2nd level spell, right? And if I'm doing my math correct, I believe this was 4,500 GP. And and of course I'm making it, so I only had to pay 2250. But like this would be 10. Now, because trying to cast resist energy, there were 5 energy types in the game, right? There was acid, cold, electricity, fire, and acid, sonic, right? So to give everybody resist energy to all 5 types would cost 5 2nd level spell slots. In a 4-person or 5-person, 4-person party, that would be 20 spell slots. That's a lot of spell slots. So what I would do is I would use my wand. Okay, I'd have a wand for each of the different elements, and I would just go boop, 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 and hit everybody with a resist energy 10, and then save my actual spell slots, which would give resist energy 20 or 30 for the types that were more common, that we knew we were going to fight, like fire or whatever. And again, we were playing in a different style of the game where these buffs lasted a longer period of time because I didn't want them to be like for 1 minute. I wanted my high level party to walk around with, basically 10 resist to all energy elements because they have a wizard in their party and the wizard can cast those spells. And in fact, going back to the point of the rogue, sometimes the rogue would be doing that because their UMD was so high that they could just bust that shit out. And that was pretty cool too. Because using a wand, for some odd reason, was always DC 20. Because it didn't scale with spell level the way that scrolls did. Because all you had to do in order to be able to use a wand was to get to enough level of your UMD check to be able to have it on your spell list, which was the same thing as DC 20. It's the same reason why being a paladin was cool, because paladins were or a ranger, because paladins and rangers were spellcasters, so they technically got Cure Light Wounds on their spell list even before they could actually cast spells, which meant that they could use the wand really early. Yeah, but the stats are more expensive, so. But like first level wands and second level wands were so cheap in the game, right? Everybody knows first level wand was $750 and a level 2 wand was $4,500. That, like, when you get to a certain point in the game, especially if you took craft wand at level 5 so that you can make them yourself, you're paying $375.5 and you were playing $2,250. It was not too pricey. I'll have to take mine in a couple minutes here, or a couple hours. Anyways, I think another reason PF2 buff durations are so low is because the game wasn't designed around an attrition model. No. Or around time having any real movement. No. Right. Just a bunch of individual combats. Combat is sport. Each is its own match. You're 100% right. Now, it is true. Wand of Cure Light Wounds does break the game. It does. And in fact, in my later PF1, in most of my D&D campaigns, I house ruled it or changed it or fixed it or broke it. I eliminated it, deleted it. Take your pick. I got rid of it because it did. It ruined the game. It was too cheap. Given the opportunity to do so, every player will enter every fight at maximum hit points, and Cure Light Wounds was far too effective at doing that, hands down. Well, so this style of magic is pretty much the opposite of magic as a soft system. This is magic as tools. This is really approaching dungeon delving as like an archaeologist, goblins and android, like bringing the right tools to the job site. If you want this, in no way, shape, or form does this make magic feel magical. 100% not at all, not even close. That's a great way to do it. I think potions are sadly underrepresented because of the cost structure of potions and the way it was structured, and there's a lot of problems for that, for sure. But I think there's a world where like potions are really cool. Someone mentioned earlier, like potions should last all day. I love that idea. That's a really cool idea, to make potions just better. Yeah, magic is just a tool of the trade, and that's okay. Like sometimes that's a fun way to play the game too. There's different ways to play the game. I don't believe in just one way to play the game. I believe in a variety of ways to play the game. Well, the old potion miscability table, right? If you took two potions if you took another potion while you were under the effect of another potion, you had to roll in the potion miscability table. I think they even have that in 5e, right? Isn't that in 5e? That alone should tell you that 5e was designed to be old school. And it just, something got fucked up along the way. I'm pretty sure that 5e has potion miscability. I really do. Oh, here we go. Yep, it does. Boom. Yep, there you go. Thank you, Smendon.
Smendon tipped $10. Got to go now. Here is some money to go towards
Cheers.
the DTX Development Fund.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you, Smendon. Appreciate it. Again, there's DTX. There's DTX, the 5e compatible version, and then there's like DTX where it's like, Derek, you're just making a different game entirely, But anyways, yeah, the fact that, but thank you, Smendon. I appreciate it. But yeah, this was in, now, yeah, it is an optional, it is a variant, I will admit. It's not like it's the core rule. But the fact that this table exists in 5e D&D with things like one potion works, but its effects are now permanent. For example, a potion of healing might just increase the drinker's hit points permanently, maximum, by 4. But an oil of etherealness might permanently trap the user in the ethereal plane. The fact that this is even mentioned as a variant
should indicate to you so much about where their mind was when they were making 5th edition. Because this wasn't in 4th edition, and this wasn't in 3rd edition. The last time that this was in a thing was in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, A, D, and D. So, yeah, I still think that 5th edition was, exactly, TJ. It was designed to appeal to the old school, but the old school mostly passed it over for OSR, and 5e was mostly played by new school players and people who just wanted to play the D&D brand. And again, I think it was just a weird, moment where like, this is the closest thing I can actually. This is actually the thing that I think of. I think about is it Hitachi, right? Hitachi made the neck massager, and that's what they made it for. And then like women discovered it was a very good sex toy, and it became very popular. And it was selling off the shelves, but no one was using it for its intended purpose at all. But like the company refused to like acknowledge that that's why people were paying it, because I think it was a very conservative Japanese company. There was even, I remember there was a Sex and the City episode about it with Samantha. I remember this from like the late 90s or whatever, early 2000s. And speaking of magic wands, and so that's kind of reminds me of what 5th edition D&D was. Like they made this game to be this kind of like new school polished version of old school D&D. Like, hey, we're going to bring back old school D&D with potion miscibility tables and, just old school, we're going to throw in a little bit of the modern techniques that we developed during 4th edition just to make the game run a little bit easier and smoother. But we're going to rely a lot on just go with your gut. We're not worried about storytelling and balanced combat so much. We're just going to create a good old-fashioned old school D&D game. And then for whatever reason, Critical Role, Stranger Things, whatever, the COVID, whatever, all those reasons that people have talked about, the game became super popular. And literally, it is the worst edition of the game for what these people are using it for. And so I've always said that 5e was designed to be old school. Well, they old school. They are wrong. It is old school. It is very old school. In fact, it's more old school than 3rd edition. It's more old school than 4th edition, I think. I mean, it's definitely more old school than 4th edition, but it's more old school than 3rd edition. And I'll tell you why. The flat math, the flat progression. In 4th and 3rd edition, a fighter might start the campaign with a 16 strength and a BAB of 1 and maybe weapon focus as their feat. So they have a +5 to hit. At level 20, that fighter might have a 28 strength. Hell, fuck it. They might have used some wishes. They have a 30 strength, right? Sorry. Giving them a +10. Their BAB is 20. Their feat bonuses are like 3. Their weapon bonus from their magic weapon is like 5. Their sacred bonus and insight bonus and whatever like that's like another 5. And now they have a +43 to hit. It's a massive gulf between the two of them. And in D&D 5e, I mean, yeah, I know people, I'm sure there's silly, dumb, broken things, but for the most part, right, your stats cap at 20. And so if your strength was, 16, it's going to get to 20. And your proficiency goes from 2 to 6. And I think the highest magical item bonus you can get is 3. So if I'm right, and tell me if I'm right, 3, you start at +5, you end at +14. Is that right? I'm sure someone's going to be like, no, there's some random third-party class, and you can dip it with multi-class, and there's some sort of sorcerer thing, and there's probably a sorcerer paladin thing. But as far as I remember, that is, that's my 5e snafu. And so I remember, look, numbers go burr is a thing. I remember when we played, 3rd edition, and people were like, yeah, sick, I can get basically +40 to my stat over the course of it. And when we started playing 5th edition and people realized that over 20 levels that their attack bonus is only going to go up by maybe like 8 to 10 points, they were like, that's nothing. I was like, yeah. I don't know why YouTube is censoring your comments. I can't see. It's not even telling me what is being commented out. Oh, I see what it is. It's because you were trying to talk about sex. Yeah, I can see it being described as the greatest hits of 5e. So, anyways, but yeah, so that's in some ways this is yeah. Yeah. Right, because like you could raise this from 3 to 5, and then you could go from a no magic item to a +3 magical item, and you could go from a 2 proficiency bonus to a 6 proficiency bonus. So I think you can go to +14. I think that's the highest. So from a progression standpoint, 5e is way more. Tame than any of the other editions that have come before it, for sure. The power creep in 5e is astronomically low. And again, because like in 4th edition, right? You added with in 4th edition, you added half your level, and you added, your strength. You got epic level strength modifiers, and in 4th edition, magic items could go to +6. in AD&D, okay, 1st edition, by the way, old school D&D, the most powerful blade you could get was +5. That was true in 2nd edition. That was true in 3rd edition. In 4th edition, you could get a +6 weapon. In 4th edition. In 5th edition, only +3. When my group encountered 5th edition, we were like, man, there's just no power. There's no power creep in this game. There's no we're like the math is so flat. Like, how does anybody ever actually hit or do anything in this game? Yeah, because remember, like I said, I'm not even including, spells here. I'm just including like your items. Like if the cleric casts prayer or bless or haste or what's that other spell? Moment of insight. You could easily have a +60 to hit. I mean, in 3rd edition, I was being. This is like just normal progression of the game. If you want to add spells and bless, prayer, haste, my mind is completely blanking. Technically, you could cast magic weapon spells, which in 3rd edition scaled better than your actual magic weapons. So, right. And what is the AC of a Baylor behind cover? Great point. I think the 5th edition AC of a Baylor is 20. Is that right? People who are more proficient than me. We joke about that all the time. And apparently the D&D wiki. Did I lose my connection to the internet? Here we go. This, I don't know if this is 3rd edition or 3.5. But in AD&D 3.5, I think, a Baylor was AC 35. So you hit it on a -5. If your character actually had some buffs, you hit it on a -25. In Baylor is 19. Okay. So if your character no buffs, just, your strength went to 20, your proficiency went to 6, you picked up a +3 magical item, you have a +14 to hit, you hit on a 5 or higher. Now again, you could have some spells, you could have bless, you could have guidance, you could have all that stuff, but you could have that stuff in 4th edition too, so, or 3rd edition too, and take your attack bonus up to like 60. So yeah. Yes, the touch AC of the Baylor, again in 3.5, was 28. Sorry, that's flat-footed. Was 16. 16 was his touch AC. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? You're shooting somebody. You don't have to like hit them somewhere specifically. You just need to hit them anywhere. All I'm saying is that, 5th edition is like pretty low powered, all things considered. It really isn't as broken, I think, as people think. And we're not even going Godzilla here. Okay, if we were going Godzilla, this would be far worse. This would be far worse. And we're not even, that's Godzilla. I mean, we could also go with a wizard. Okay, but like if you see a wizard who has like Tensor's transformation and the buff spells that turn a wizard into a better fighter than a barbarian plus a fighter combined, it's just crazy. Yeah, like Pun is like on a different level. Like Pun is so ridiculous, it's almost not even fair. But just like a cleric casting divine transformation and divine power and a couple of buff spells, and they are unstoppable, to put it lightly. And that's just with a couple of spells. Divine power and righteous might are like two of the ones that divine power, righteous might, prayer, bless, greater magic weapon, spikes. There's a handful of like just incredibly powerful buff spells that just make a cleric into like a single target, make them better melee than a fighter or a barbarian for sure. Divine power was completely ridiculous. I mean, I remember. Let's trust me. I remember these. I remember these spells very well. And then the wizard, was the same. I mean, the wizard had access to a lot of crazy spells, on top of just instant death spells, of course, obviously. Tell us the one again on the synthesis summoner paladin. Exactly. To be clear, that campaign, Smith was like, guys, I am throwing down the gauntlet. This is a max challenge campaign. We talk about campaign as challenge. This is campaign as max challenge. Smith was like, I am going to throw the hardest stuff at you ever. It's going to be completely unfair and broken, and blah, 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 and make the best characters that you possibly can. So I did. That I knew how to make. And even I didn't fully appreciate the power, because by the end of that game, so my downside of that campaign was that my character never died until the very end. And so I never got to like benefit from some of the learnings that happened. But one of the learnings that happened, we actually learned about the power of, I think it's called the Dark Wanderer Gunslinger, which allowed you to add your charisma bonus maybe to your AC, because like most of the completely powerful OP builds went through Paladin because it allowed you to stack your charisma to all of your saves. And because we were playing with this escalating point buy system, people would start with like 25s, 26s charismas. And so by being a Paladin, you could boost all your saves up immediately, and you needed high saves to be able to survive all the instant death effects and stuff in the game. But your AC was still shit. And apparently, I want to say there was a gunslinger archetype that was, I think, called the Dark Wanderer that my buddy Rich discovered from Pathfinder 1. Let's see if we can find. I'm remembering this from over 10 years ago. PF1 Gunslinger archetypes. I don't see it. Oh, here it is. It might be this. It might be Mysterious Stranger. Let me bring this up. Let's see if we can see. Well, let's do this together. Is everything crashing? Are we good? Lore Oracle, maybe. Yeah, so George, Not a Drummer, was in that campaign. All right, here we go. I think it was Mysterious Stranger. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was Lore Oracle. I mean, this thing is definitely using a bunch of charisma. So this probably was part of the problem, part of the thing here. That maybe I was mistaken. Maybe it was Lore Oracle. I mean, this is another charisma modifier. I mean, it looks like this does use charisma. I mean, the point was we were trying to maximize what we could get out of out of charisma. But anyways, yeah, the point was to try to maximize on one stat, so you could just spend all of your character points onto that one stat. I bounced off 5e partly because I came from PF 3.x and the numbers did not burr enough. Aola gets it. It was actually the biggest. I was actually the biggest advocate in my group. They were even more turned off by the lack of burr than me. Yes, and to be clear, the ultimate downfall of that campaign was there was a monster that had a permanent maze aura, and none of that mattered because it doesn't allow a save. And as soon as it got close to all of us, we all got teleported into its maze, and we could not escape. And if we did escape, we appeared where we were, which meant that we got remazed. And no one had spell resistance. That was our fault. That's the only way to resist a maze. And that was it. That was the end of the. We basically got killed. Nature Oracle was charisma AC. Okay, there was some sort of build. Oracle. Now that George said that, made more sense to me again. I never had to get it. Yeah, my build. What Penguin was talking about was, we were allowed to make custom races so I made a custom race that basically was like -6 to strength, -4 to dex, -4 to con, plus, 4 to wisdom, plus like 6 to ka or something like that. And then my character, because we were Gestalt, and then my character was a paladin, but I was also a Gestalt summoner, but I was what was called a synthesist summoner, which is basically a summoner who rides around inside of their summon. And so my summon was like a mech suit, right? It was like a ethereal, it was like an ethereal mech that my paladin rode around inside of. And because both paladin and summoner keyed off of charisma, my summon had really good strength, dex, and con. And while you were riding around inside of your summon, you used its strength, dex, and con. So the fact that my strength, dex, and con were shit didn't really matter. And then my charisma was boosted to high hell. So as a paladin and a summoner, I had a shitload of spells. I had high DC. I had really good saves. I had a really powerful smite. Yada 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 yada. That was my broken character that managed to live longer than anybody else in this full-on, no holds barred, death campaign. Oh, is someone call him Pumpkin Penguin again? That's been a minute. Pumpkin. Penguin called himself Pumpkin. Oh, I called Pumpkin Penguin. That was me. I did it. Oh, Pumpkin, I'm sorry. It's been so long. I spoke my true name. I called you that. Sorry. Listen. I went old school. We were talking about old school gaming. I went old school. Listen, ever since Smith basically left the Discord, no one messes with you like with that anymore. Oh man, that was a Freudian slip. Good times. Anyways, yeah. Well, yeah, Pumpkin, it's been amazing getting to play with him the last couple of weeks over Fabulous Ultima. He did miss this last week. He didn't get to play with us this Friday, but it's been pretty cool getting to play with him. I love him. He's my boy. Good stuff. Anyways, long story short, I want to do some kind of West March with the patrons. My thought was probably something like 3E in Uber Death dungeon. But, you know, maybe it's DTX, maybe it's old school, maybe it's Shadow Dark or Shadow Deep, maybe it's Shadow Dark, I don't know. But there's a lot of love for 3E that lingers under the surface amongst the patrons. And I think it'd be a fun way to sort of, you know, tip my hat. Someone asked, would we record those sessions? I don't know, mostly because it would be kind of, you know, there's a lot of issues with people not feeling comfortable. And I don't want people to turn down a game because they don't want to be published for all time on the internet. So that's an issue. The other issue is I fully expect for certain groups to keep some of their information hush-hush and secret. And not want to share information with their you know, because not ever necessarily all the PCs don't have to be on team PC. You know, everybody could be kind of out for their own thing. Like I'm kind of, again, if you're playing in this campaign, you know, you are assigning the waiver. Like, this is not a normal campaign. Derek is not a normal GM, even if he, you know, even if this wasn't some sort of weird campaign. Derek is a GM that will basically give no fucks and will kind of, you know, pull no punches. But this is the kind of game where it's like, I am fully okay with telling you that your character has been killed and replaced with a doppelganger. You know, I'll continue to allow you to play their doppelganger, and for each PC that you lead to their death, I will grant you a gold ticket. You know, this kind of weird Faustian bargain, you know, or I'll give your next character higher stats when you actually finally make a new character or something like that. That kind of crazy stuff. By the way, if that sounds crazy, I did that before. I mean, not with gold tickets, they didn't exist. But in my Dragon's Delve campaign, the party's ranger got killed? Something by doppelgangers, and he played as a doppelganger of his ranger for like 3 or 4 sessions, and was trying to convince/lead the party down to get this magic staff that the doppelgangers wanted. And then after the party got the staff, the doppelgangers ambushed them and, you know, tried to get it back. And that's when they discovered that Rich, their buddy, had been in fact a doppelganger for like the last month of play. We've got a bunch of people. I'll take that deal. Can I start as a doppelganger? That sounds awesome. Yes, exactly, Sapphire. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Exactly, 100%. I would like to see any game in a fashion of the Torchbearer streams. Oh, very cool. I'm sure there are enough patrons to do a mini campaign for some obscure system, maybe some YouTubers from the RFC sphere. Yeah, I mean, Torchbearer was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And it would be cool to be able to share that. Again, I don't know the best way, you know, to share that information. And again, even with the Torchbearer, we only had 2 groups, and one of those groups was totally fine with their sessions being played up on the internet, and the other group was only comfortable with that happening and being available to the patrons. And even then, you know, we had the honor system, and I had to say, hey, other group, don't watch the other group because you might get some information that the other group doesn't have. By the way, somebody asked earlier, with the lockout system, would players be able to get a secondary character, a third character? Absolutely, 100%. Number one, it's a great ticket sink. Number 2, I would fully expect that active players might want to have a whole roster, right? You know, you want to have a cleric or a healer in case a group needs a healer. You might want to have a fighter or a barbarian, some sort of, you know, tough damage dealer. Maybe you want to have like a monk or something like that, you know, because that's the character you really want to play, but you understand it doesn't fit in every group. So you might have 2 or 3 or 4 different characters if you have the tickets that you have as a stable, number 1, so that you can go on an adventure, your character gets locked out, and you can go, cool, I won't play that character for the next 3 weeks, but I will go and play my secondary or tertiary character. But also to give you options. You might look at a sign up and you see fighter, barbarian, ranger, barbarian, and you're like, okay, I guess I'm bringing the cleric, you know? Yeah, troop style, 100% Happy Tree. And I would even probably go out of my way to try to create some sort of legacy management system, you know, where maybe like you nominate one character as a primary character and the other characters are sort of like henchmen or something of that main character. But I immediately took the devil's deal. We were just describing to people how that worked in our mega game stream the other day. But yeah, so you know, when we use the term pay to win, it's kind of, again, a misnomer because number 1, I don't make any extra money. You're not really paying anything. These are people who are already paying, $25 or $50 a month. They already have these tickets, so it's not really anything. Number two, you could bet your ass if somebody comes into my campaign as some high stat monk, man, I'm gonna be aiming for them. I'm gonna try to take that out. Yeah, it's a bit pay to playish. I will admit. But it's, again, I do have people in my community who really, again, anybody who pays me money is crazy. But I have people who just have, literally pay, $100 a month. And so whenever I have an opportunity, so if I run a game, which is a limited thing, even if I ran games all the time, it's still going to be a limited thing. And we have 530 patrons. Not every patron wants to play a game with me. That's a bold assumption. But at the end of the day, there's only 5 or 6 seats available. And if I have to make a choice about who gets that seat, I do definitely want to give some acknowledgement to the people who, quite frankly, contribute a lot of money. And so it is like it's a privilege. It's me saying, and also, by the way, I want to be very clear about something. If those high level ticketed people don't want to play or they can't play because of their time frame, it's not like I say, oh, well, then no one can play. No, then I let other people. So it's really more like they have the first right of refusal is how I would probably phrase it. They get the first option. If they don't want to play, that's cool. And then we'll move down the line and we'll let other people play who maybe aren't $100 a month members or $50 a month members. But, so we in our Torchbearer campaign, we had plenty of people in there who were only $25 a month member. They weren't all $100 a month member. But if you wanted to play and you were at that level, then you kind of got a guaranteed spot, which is, I think it's fair. And I think it's even more fair when you consider that there's a lot of places out there that charge, $40, $50, $60 per session. And, for one session, or even more. Some of them are like $20 an hour. So per seat. And so this is, possibly half or a third of this that, from like a play online type site or something like that. That'd be cool, TJ Duck. I mean, 3rd edition, not exactly the most clickbait. It's like it's this weird thing now where it's like old school 5e. I would even say 4e is kind of up there, but not really. But like 2nd edition and like 3rd edition, I feel like they're like way down in the popularity elements. But I have a lot of that. I have the Wheel of Time book, which is great. The real problem with TJ Duck is getting PDFs of these so that I have a way to show them. I mean, but they're probably available on Drive-Thru-RPG now that I think about it. But I love like the Wheel of Time book. I love Sword and Sorcery book. What else do I love? I did do Iron Heroes, but we didn't like go super deep into it, I don't think. But Iron Heroes, Arcana Evolved, Arcana Unearthed is really good. We already covered that one. What's another good one? There's a bunch of good ones. Midnight, I know Midnight. I don't think I own Midnight. All my 3rd edition stuff is in the storage unit because I had so much 3rd edition stuff and I didn't have room for it when the painters came, so I had to make a decision about what I put in storage and it put in. But Wheel of Time, there's an EverQuest. There's an EverQuest D20 game. It's crazy. It literally uses mana points, and you have like mana regen that occurs in real time. It's crazy. There's an EverQuest one. I forgot about that one. That was awesome. I actually think the Wheel of Time is kind of sick, actually. All board games ranked. Well, now that we have the studio, Pumpkin, now that we have there we go. Yeah. Now that we have the studio and we have like the top down rig, it's a lot easier for us to potentially do something like a board game thing, which I think would be a lot of fun because obviously board games do not work well for the PDF thing. But now that we can throw that down, that'd be cool. I mean, again, I worry, this is a TTRPG channel, and obviously I have a lot of passions and interests. I don't talk about sailing or woodworking that often. But considering last year, 2025, we covered 42 different RPG products. Okay, dozens and dozens of systems. And by the way, by cover, I don't mean a 10-minute video. I mean a 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 20, 30 hours of content. I don't think that this channel is exactly, not fulfilling its obligation to cover RPGs. What could TTRPGs learn from board games? Be better. This is true. Yes, I have had. There's a difference though, Pumpkin. So any stream that isn't Tuesday or Thursday, I consider to be, I can do whatever I want. I view, this is just my personal philosophy, Tuesdays and Thursdays are my mandatory streaming about RPGs. And I don't try to talk about, I try not to talk about random, it does happen, but like we did the award ceremony, which I guess is, whatnot. But I try not to do random mega game type stuff, or I try not to do any of that stuff. And a lot of times if I do that, I will try to make a additional stream on Sunday to make up for it. So I try to have 2 streams a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, that are focused on the, a first look, a deep dive, a GM philosophy, a whatever have you. Which reminds me, actually, I got a 13th Age 2nd edition. Pellegrin Pest sent me the collector's edition, but they sent me 2, and I'm not sure why, but I might want to do a 13th Age deep dive just because I have this collector's edition that I probably want to give away. And I figure we'll do a deep dive, and we can actually go into some of the class effects and show people how cool they are. 13th Age cleric with cast for effect or cast for broad or cast for potency or cast for broad effect, I think is one of the coolest ways of doing spells ever that I've seen. I can't imagine it, Elia. It generates thousands of views instead of 20, 30,000 views, and probably a lot of income from sponsorship deals and getting people hyped about your next Kickstarter or whatever. Again, I can't complain. Yes, I have a very low-cost lifestyle. I live in Cleveland, Ohio. I own my own home. I have no debt. I'm single. I'm not married. I've never been married. I don't have kids. So, I am in a low-cost situation. But that being said, I am very blessed that I can, I can do this. And make it basically get by. Yes, I'd like to do better for myself, and I'll figure out some ways to do that. I want to earn my money. I don't want to be given my money. I want to earn it. But the fact that I can talk about role-playing games with you all and hang out with you and talk about that stuff and play games and share my thoughts is pretty crazy. So I consider myself, part of the elite. I don't want to gatekeep them too much because I am, for lack of a better word, able to make a living. Now I do it in a very different way than what everybody else does. But this stream is, I a lot of times if I know a stream is going to be kind of random and nonsense, I don't even turn on the monetization. Again, I've talked about this recently. I might just turn it off. I don't know. I know it. Again, I shouldn't turn my nose up at $4,000 or $5,000 a year because I do need that money. But I just get so annoyed with how YouTube will ruin people's experiences because they will just jam in an ad break every 5 minutes. And so the only option I have is to post the video, wait for the video to get posted, and then go in manually and turn off all the manual ads. The problem is that the VOD doesn't usually go up until late, and I usually stream late, and then I go to bed. And so by the time I wake up the next morning and I'm kind of sitting down to do stuff, a lot of people have watched the VOD. And that means a lot of people already had to sit through 90% of the ads because, something like 50 to 60% of my views of a VOD occur within the first, 12 to 24 hours. So, unfortunately, by the time I even wake up, the ads are already completely jammed down everybody's throat. So, there's no really good solution for it, unfortunately. Now, what I can say is that if you post a video, you can control the ad breaks when you post it. But when a VOD gets posted, YouTube automatically puts up the ads. There's no way for me to manually set my ad breaks until the VOD is posted. So, yes, and a lot of people do have YouTube Premium. I have YouTube Premium, but not everybody has YouTube Premium, and I respect that. Well, they care about their shareholders' experience. Oh no, my light died. I don't have any cool background light. Hold on a sec. No, that's not it. There we go. Let's go with it's we're getting towards morning. We'll go with a golden. Sorry, 6 a.m. Now I slept for like 16 hours or something like that, right? Yesterday, because I slept for 10 hours and then I was awake for like 8, and then I basically went to bed at like at like 8 p.m. and I slept for like 6 hours. What is your all's excuses? Because it's 6 a.m. and some of you are still up. But I'm going to dip out here in a little bit. Oh. I gotta say I'm a GMT +3. All right. Fair enough. We got our Europe folks in the house. Respect. And I know Pumpkin works overnight, so yeah. I was like, aren't you on the East? Aren't you in EST? But if those are the hours you normally keep, all right, respect. Fair enough. That is definitely me. But again, I'm excited. I'm hoping to play a lot more games this year for sure. I mean, this year it's like my goals are, I don't really do New Year's resolutions, but play more games, board, RPG, board games, maybe video games. Get in the gym more regularly, more often. Last year, obviously, I was kind of me adapting and a lot of stuff being thrown at me and kind of being sad about it, and then just being super busy with all the conventions and still kind of reeling and not really sure what I wanted to do. So yeah, kind of resetting that. So take care of my health, take care of my mental health, and then I don't know, find something new. I don't know what I want to do, but something new, a new hobby. It's been a while since I've gotten a new hobby. Like during COVID, I got into woodworking, and that was pretty cool. And obviously that got taken from me by the fire. Part of me is like, oh, it'd be cool to get back to woodworking, but it's an expensive investment, unfortunately, to get back into that. And I'm kind of hesitant to do that with my current situation, so I'm not sure. You're still at work, got off work Saturday, took a 4-hour nap, played in a TCG tournament, then went back to work. Well, that is baller. I'll tell you though, I'm excited about this potential. I'm excited about this potential Wilder Feast mega game. I think the GM Council is going to do a great job with Northern Reaches Season 4, and basically the powers have spoken that I'm going to, basically all my ideas I'm taking them out of Dragontide because people just want, they don't want cool stuff. They just want Dragonbane, which is fine. It's cool. So that means that I don't really have to do anything for either of those mega games. In fact, Bob said, he's like, my goal is so that you don't have to be involved at all. And I was like, okay. So, yeah, I'm excited to do that. And it'll be just 100% Derek, like no GM Council, no opinions. And it'll be great. And 5 people will play it and it will never work, but it's okay. It will be mine. And I will appreciate that. There you go. So, okay, it doesn't really qualify for both of those. But one thing I want to get, maybe it could be on the list, Pumpkin, is getting back into miniature wargaming. Now, miniature wargaming involves collecting and involves playing games, and it is also very expensive. However, we live in a world of 3D printing, and I do have a 3D printer. Bob has a 3D printer. I already own thousands of dollars of miniatures, and I still own them all. And I think between those two things, I think I could get back into that hobby fairly cheaply. And my buddy Larry, he's back here living in Cleveland. He has been living here for the last year or so, but he's got a lot of money now because he's got a great new job. He's the one who's taking me to on the cruise because of his great new job. Bob is into miniature games, and I think that the StarCraft miniature game could be the reason that I might get back into mini gaming. The rules look really cool, and I don't want to get into 40K again or fantasy. I think the rules are so boring and overbearing and tedious and just old and weighed down by horrible people and a horrible company. And I will always love Warhammer, but at this point, like if I'm going to play Warhammer, I'm going to play Total War. And with the new Dawn of War 4 coming out and the Total War Warhammer 40K, I'll be able to get all my fill there. And I still think Total War Warhammer is a fantastic game, and I just don't really have this desire or to play either of those games. Even though I think the rules for the old world are really good, because I hate Age of Sigmar. 100%. I stopped playing after 8th edition. But when this came out a couple years ago, I was like, oh, this looks so cool. And I bought it, and I thought some of the rules changes were great, but it's like, this is just such a massive tome to just play miniature games. And I'm not a tournament player. This is not a place where I'm a tournament player. I mean, when I played, competitively, I almost always played Terran. If I had to rank them, for me, Terran, then Protoss, then Zerg. Although I like all three, but Terran, then Protoss, then Zerg. My current hobbies are video games, card games, board games, and role-playing games. I need to diversify. Okay, that's fair. And I do think you should. And again, that's one of the reasons why, I play racquetball. That's really cool. And I mean, I'm already playing twice a week. I don't know if I physically could play more than that. But maybe I could get into, pickleball or something that's not quite as strenuous on top of that. But I kind of wanted to get back into hiking and maybe do some overnights in nearby woods. I'd love to get back into sailing, but again, it's kind of pricey and expensive. Woodworking, again, pricey and expensive. Woodworking though is great because I could sell pieces. I mean, there was a period of time there when I was making a few $1,000s a month off of selling stuff from my woodworking, which is great. But it's physical. I'm on my feet. I'm working with my hands, but it's mental. I think there's a lot of math and a lot of design that goes into it and being aware. And then it's also very spiritual for me. I mean, again, for me, it was a wonderful thing. And that is why it was so sad that my fire in my garage consumed all my woodworking stuff. Unfortunately. Anyways, Tarek, why didn't you just rebuy it? Because my insurance was fucked up and basically I had to eat that loss. That's what it basically comes down to. Unfortunately. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be doing a lot of cons again, I'm sure, this year. That'll be cool. Oh, NightCon will be really cool. I'm looking forward to that. We finally got approval. I think that we're finally getting talked to by those people, so I'm thinking we're going to enjoy that. But again, that's only one time. You need something you can do over and over again. My fiance loves camping and hiking. Nice. I hate the outdoors. I lived in the woods most of my life. I'm over it. Fair. That's fair. I love being outdoors, and obviously I love hiking. But I will admit that part of my love of hiking and camping is also I'm kind of a gear nut. I like gear. I like expensive. It doesn't have to be expensive, but I like gear. I like gear for role-playing games. I like gear for photography and videography. And I mean, part of the thing I love about camping and hiking and like climbing, rock climbing, is I love all the different pieces of gear and same thing with woodworking, getting, I got this new tool. I got this plane. I got this saw. I got this miter gauge, whatever it is. I love cool tools and I love gear. So that's always been a really fun part for me. So hiking definitely fills that role for me as well. But yeah, if I could play this Fab Ultima campaign with my group, if I could do this West Marches, if I could run some One Ring, maybe some Mythic Bastion land, some Daggerheart actual play with the group, would be cool for the channel. And if I could do all that this year, I think I'd be pretty happy with playing RPGs. So again, I don't need to play 22 RPGs a year like what Bob wants to do, but I just need to play some. Give me one good campaign. You know, that's I'm at the point in my life. Just give me one good campaign. That's all I care about. All right, folks. It's 6 a.m. I'm going to sign off. I'm actually going to go get some coffee. Maybe I'll get some breakfast. Maybe I'll get some McDonald's breakfast. I don't think I've had that in a long time. Yeah, it's probably like $28 now. Yeah, Bastionland, great game. I mean, it won my indie game of the. It won the Golden Knight from the Indie Games on the. Yeah, not Indie Games. The Indie Game of 2025 award from the Golden Knights. Listen, I didn't say it was gourmet. I just said it was delicious. But I never get fast food. I really don't. It's just not something I do. It's not part of my lifestyle because I don't really work, so I don't like leave the house. So I just make food at home and I just eat at home, and I'm lazy and I don't. And Scout's honor, I have never once in my life used Uber Eats or DoorDash. I am not. There's definitely some times in my life where I have, even when I get a pizza or Chinese food, I usually go and get it. I go and pick it up. Like, especially because the Chinese food place that we like is from Amanda's hometown, which is like 25 minutes away. So they don't really deliver here. I've never used Uber Eats or DoorDash. So I refuse to pay the charge, the money, and I'll just get in my car and go and get it. So I don't, and it's fast, it's faster for me to go get it. I can ensure the quality and I can check to make sure it's right. There's just so many little things about it. And anyways, I don't Uber Eats and I don't DoorDash. And I have friends, some people that have even been on this channel. They're like, oh, I spent $2,000 last month. Like, they're single. Like, I spent $2,000 last month on food because of DoorDash or whatever. And they're like, yeah, I got a $10 burrito. And then it was a $10 delivery fee. And then I tipped them $5. So the $10 burrito cost me $25. And it's like, yeah. And that was lunch. So and then they're like, and then I did it for dinner. And so I spent $55 yesterday on 2 meals. And, you do that a bunch and suddenly you're spending $400 a week. And before you know it, you're spending $1,600 a month. Crazy. I mean, power to you, I guess, if you can do it. But even when I had a lot of money, well, this is the reason why. Like I said, my lifestyle requirements are fairly low. But yeah. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh yeah, we'll be back later tonight. We're going to do a super secret Sunday system stream. We're going to be covering Heroic Deeds, which is an indie game from Garblag Games, which was sponsored by, I think, Ryan or Shoefix. But they this is an author who joined our Patreon, but they really weren't. They weren't really the ones who prompted this. That was my other patrons who pumped it up and wanted it to be covered. So I'm looking forward. It's on Drive-Thru RPG, so that's pretty cool. And it's a goal-based XP heroic fantasy emergent campaigns with modern mechanics. So I think it'll be really, really interesting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Should be pretty cool. Inspired by games such as Advanced Hero Quest, solid. That's the advanced version of the board game Hero Quest, really cool. Dungeons and Dragons, Earth Dawn, Forbidden Lands, Shadow Dark, The One Ring, and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and movies such as Conan the Barbarian, The Dark Crystal, Dragon Slayer, Crawl, Red Sonja, and Willow. I love every single thing on that list. So this should be a 10 out of 10 slam dunk, but we'll see. I love it when I get to encounter really cool games that make me excited to be an RPGer. I'll say that. Yes. I'm also interested in seeing how they handle their rewards and mechanisms as well. For Trevor, for the Broken Empire. I'm also really interested to see how they handle the disease progression chart, because that's so important to simulationist games. Of all the things they choose to simulate, disease, they're like, disease. Anyways, all right, folks, I will see you later tonight or tomorrow morning, I guess, if you're on the other side of the world. But I enjoyed hanging out with you during the nighttime. I'm going to get my day started. I'll probably get my day started and then post a thumbnail for tonight. And then I'll probably end up taking a nap this afternoon before I do the stream. Because, again, my sleep schedule is probably going to be all fucked up. But I have to take care of no one and nothing except for myself and my dogs, so I can do whatever I want. And that is the upside. The downside, I have no regular income. I have no paid time off. I have no person who would take care of me if I was sick. I have no one who loves me except for my mom. And I have no health insurance. So, outside of that, things are pretty good. But I have my freedom. And isn't that worth something? Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with me tonight. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for the handful of people who... pros and cons, buddy. Everything... Listen, nothing in this life is free. Nothing in this life is free, especially freedom. Okay? Because freedom ain't free, as they say. But thank you, everybody who stopped in and popped in tonight. That was a lot of fun. I didn't even think we were going to get 5 people. But, we managed to have 100 people here, so that's awesome. Hopefully you guys have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you all tonight and, of course, into tomorrow. And it should be a hell of a thing. I think tonight is going to be episode 399. So that means next week we're going to have our episode live stream number 400. Can't believe it. Crazy. That we're already at 400, and that'll be a lot of fun. We'll try to do something cool for that. In the meantime, I'll see you on the Discord if you're a member of the Patreon. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Peace.